In a certain world, the sky was overcast, crows filled the air. And the heartfelt thoughts of a young man echoed, it had been 40 years since I got lost in this world. A handsome young man wielded his sword, slashing at a monster, level 1, at the start of the journey. I had absolutely nothing. The young man thought as he fought, continuously swinging his sword at the monster. He leapt into the air, delivering a powerful strike toward the monster below. A surge of immense energy erupted, causing a massive shockwave. A deep trench formed in front of the young man. He sheathed his sword, exhaled in relief, and muttered, "Today, it ends." The young man's stat screen appeared, level 225. Yoo Seungwoo, accompanied by 3 others. A striking red notification flashed. The Supreme Demon King has been defeated. Yoo Seungwoo and his party, a human priest, an elf archer, and an ogre warrior, rested after the battle. A radiant, divine golden light drew everyone's attention. A golden-haired goddess slowly emerged. "My heroes, I trust you all," she said. The goddess smiled proudly. "I knew you would defeat the Supreme Demon King." The one who appeared was the goddess Gaia. Yoo Seungwoo's face darkened as he glared at her angrily. "You're smiling?" Gaia, seeing his reaction, felt a bit uneasy. "What?" he continued, his voice low and menacing. "Are you really smiling right now?" The goddess flinched at his response. His voice carried the weight of resentment. "You granted others extraordinary abilities, powerful weapons, and the strongest teams," he said. At this moment, the goddess's face scrunched up like a monkey's bottom, while channeling aura into his sword. He continued. "But you gave me nothing at all." Gaia, feeling guilty, avoided his gaze. "Well, I didn't have enough divine power because I summoned too many people from other worlds." Yoo Seungwoo roared in anger. "Do you want me to cut you down?" The ogre warrior quickly restrained him, and the priest urgently tried to calm him down. "Relax, Seungwoo." Everyone around was terrified by his outburst. Gaia was secretly alarmed. He's definitely become far too powerful. How could a human even achieve this? She cleared her throat to break the awkward tension. "Anyway, I want to reward all of you." "What do you want?" The towering ogre spoke first. "I wish to move to the next battlefield. But I hope the reason for going there is both noble and grand." The priest's eyes shone with pride. "I don't really want anything because I've had the privilege of joining an incredible adventure with amazing teammates." Yoo Seungwoo pinched his cheek. "Aren't you embarrassed saying that?" The priest grinned innocently. "Why would I be embarrassed? You're the greatest teammates in the world." The elf archer then stepped forward. "The power to travel to any dimension grant me the ability to continue using weapons." Gaia hesitated. "I can help with dimensional travel, but as for the weapons, why do you need them?" The elf pointed to the sky. "Isn't it obvious? For the revolution." Behind him, a fiery effect of hope burst forth. With confidence, he declared, "A revolution for the oppressed and the excluded races. Let the light of revolution spread across dimensions. And let us aim our weapons at the ruling tyrants." Yoo Seungwoo, standing behind him with arms crossed, nodded in approval. "Yep, that's just like you, Crimson Elf." The golden-haired archer smiled brightly. "Thanks for understanding me so well." Gaia looked at the two and sighed internally. "Stop encouraging each other already." She massaged her temples in frustration. "And you, Seungwoo? What about you?" Yoo Seungwoo placed a hand on his chin, deep in thought. He pondered over what he truly desired. Money and items? I already have more than I can count. Power and fame? Those are things I can achieve anytime. So I don't even care about them anymore. At level 255, capable of traveling through time and conquering worlds, he thought about the past. His eyes grew melancholic. What I need most now is, he remembered the first time he stepped into town as a novice adventurer. Yoo Seungwoo. Level 1, filthy and dressed in ragged clothes. His stomach growled loudly, demanding food. Yoo Seungwoo clutched his rumbling belly and muttered to himself. "I need to eat something first." Looking around, his gaze was suddenly caught by something unexpected. A restaurant sign. Entering the restaurant, he took a seat and timidly called out, Hey." A man at the next table shouted. "The usual, boss." Taking a cue, Yoo Seungwoo raised his hand. "I'll have the same, boss." A moment later, a plate of enoki mushroom stuffed meat rolls appeared before him, emanating an irresistible aroma. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he stared at the glowing plate of food. Finally, "I can eat something decent." Tears of joy welled up as he picked up a fork. "Thank you for the meal," he said, stabbing the fork into a piece of meat. Suddenly, Gaia's voice echoed. "Hero," she continued, her voice escalating from whispers to loud calls. "Seungwoo, are you daydreaming about the past?" Seungwoo clenched the hand poking his shoulder. Yes, I was reminiscing about the good old days, he said, his tone cold, his face darkened as his gaze turned sharp, emitting an aura of hostility. About the days when I was first summoned to another world, without so much as a single healing potion to my name. Gaia fidgeted awkwardly. As I explained before, but Seung Woo cut her off. I made up my mind. I want to return to my homeland and open a restaurant. Everyone, including Gaia, froze at his declaration. A restaurant? Gaia finally stammered. Seung Woo replied nonchalantly, I've been thinking about introducing the food from this world to the people of my homeland. The elf archer scratched his ear, as though mishearing. You want to sell the food from this world? Did I hear that wrong? Seung Woo gestured dismissively. It's not a big deal. Earth's food is so common. But selling the fancy dishes from this world? Now that has meaning. Everyone around him stared with exasperation. Are you serious, you lunatic? One muttered. May the people of Earth be blessed by the gods. Gaia looked at him in disbelief. Do you realize what you're saying? Out of all dimensions, this world's food is the worst. At her words, Seung Woo gripped his sword tightly and slammed it into the ground before her, making her flinch in fear. He glared at her, his voice low and menacing. That's exactly why. The group stared at him curiously. Seung Woo's lips curled into a dangerous smirk. If only I had to endure this terrible food, wouldn't that be unfair? Seoul, a prosperous and peaceful city where the lights remain on even through the night. Somewhere in the city, a giant foot crushed a street lamp under its weight. However, with the sudden appearance of dimensional gates and monsters, the name, Seoul, vanished without a trace. The sky turned crimson as an enormous spatial gate opened, unleashing hordes of monsters that ravaged the city. Atop a skyscraper in disaster zone, a young man stood on the railing, surveying the chaos below. He fumed, his voice laced with anger. Damn it, a woman approached him, a top 100 ranked hunter. She glanced down at the swarm of monsters and calmly remarked, please maintain the dignity of a frontline member. Sir Baek Hang Hyuk, the young man, revealed to be the superstar operative Baek Hang Hyuk, pulled out a cigarette to steady his nerves. He took a long drag and gazed down at the destruction engulfing the city. I can't help but curse, he muttered, and now I have to close that damn thing too? The purple-haired woman replied, no, you don't need to close that low-tier gate. It'll seal itself soon enough. Baek Hang Hyuk's face twisted with annoyance. I'm so sick of working overtime. Do you even know what's going on here? The woman responded. This is an S-rank danger zone. Nothing unusual. She sighed. At least, it wasn't until 4 days ago when too many monsters started pouring out. Baek Hang Hyuk pointed at a monster below. That's true, but look at that one. It's running as if it's being chased by some deranged beast. The direction he indicated revealed a three-headed monster running frantically, its head's turning back repeatedly to check behind it. The woman followed his gaze and replied, the second line thinks the same. Min suspects the boss will show up soon. She then reached out and snatched the cigarette from Baek Hang Hyuk's hand. And please, stop smoking already. But Baek Hang Hyuk deftly dodged her attempt, keeping the cigarette firmly in his grasp. A sudden downpour extinguished Baek Hang Hyuk's cigarette. He looked up at the sky, annoyed. Damn it, so irritating. He flicked the cigarette away and turned to leave. If Min said so, then the boss raid will start soon enough. Tell them I'm taking 2 days off. The purple-haired woman stared at him. Taking time off, just like that, at this hour? Where are you even going? Without looking back, Baek Hang Hyuk replied, I'm not in the mood today. A sly grin crept onto his face. So, I'm going to fill my stomach to save myself from the misery of overtime. The woman gave him a judgmental look. Here we go again, elsewhere in the city. Baek Hang Hyuk stood in front of a restaurant, clearly intrigued. Alright, he pointed ahead. I've made my choice, that place. The place he indicated was a restaurant with its lights still on. Holding his stomach, he grumbled. Overtime exhaustion, battle stress, and now an empty stomach. His eyes grew resolute. I've hit my stress limit, cracking his knuckles. He smirked arrogantly. What if the food is awful? Then they'd better be ready to take that signboard down. He licked his lips mischievously. But if the food is good? A devilish grin spread across his face. I'll berate them for making me eat day and night. As he reached out to open the door, he froze at the sight of a sign. Closed. Sign hung on the door. Baek Hang Hyuk frowned. It's closed? Feigning disappointment, he sighed. Ha, how unlucky. Grabbing the sign, he muttered. I can't believe this flimsy board is stopping to visit from. He crushed the sign with his hand. The frontline superstar, Baek Hang Hyuk. With an arrogant kick, he slammed the door open. What a joke. Inside the restaurant, Yoo Seungwoo was deep in thought about running his business. I still haven't signed a contract with a supplier, and I need to buy the remaining equipment. Taking a sip of his coffee, he mused, it's been about 4 days since I arrived on Earth. Smiling to himself, he thought, no rush, I can take it easy for now. He picked up a movie disc and spun around cheerfully, humming. This is the life, movies and coffee. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted the piece as Baek Hang-hyuk kicked the door open and barged in. Baek Hang-hyuk adjusted his clothes arrogantly and glanced around. So empty, seems like there are no customers today. Yoo Seungwoo remained silent for a moment. Turning around, his face darkened as he glared at Baek Hang-hyuk. That's because we haven't officially opened yet. Unbothered, Baek Hang-hyuk sat at a table and scoffed. I don't care. He casually added, just serve me something tasty. Yoo Seungwoo's eyes twitched in irritation. This guy barged in, ruined my movie time, and now he's being rude on top of it? Does this brat have a death wish? Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Yoo Seungwoo observed him closely. Wait, this customer. He glanced at Baek Hang-hyuk, who was tapping the table impatiently. Noticing the stare, Baek Hang-hyuk slammed the table. Huh? What are you looking at? Yoo Seungwoo shook his head dismissively. Nothing, but internally, he was assessing him. Such frail arms, a kick could snap those legs in two. And those eyes, didn't even notice the closed sign. Poor kid, probably malnourished for years. Lacking both manners and common sense. His brain must have shriveled up too. Moved by pity, Yoo Seungwoo wiped away a fake tear. What a sad little creature. Baek Hang-hyuk noticed the odd expression on his face and exploded with anger. Why are you looking at me with those pitying eyes? Can't you see my cloak? I'm a frontline superstar. Ignoring the outburst, Yoo Seungwoo opened the refrigerator. Let's see, what's on the menu today? Baek Hang-hyuk banged the table, shouting. Hey, are you mocking me or something? Slumping back into his chair, he grumbled. Whatever, just give me something edible already. Yoo Seungwoo scanned the fridge. Mumbling, these ingredients might be a bit too intense. His eyes landed on a glowing, fresh piece of meat. Picking it up, he smiled knowingly. Alright, kid, I'll help you out. I'll serve you something truly special. Placing the meat on the cutting board, he explained. This is shoulder meat from a crimson dragon found between its long neck and wings. If we compare it to pork, it's like premium pork. With precise, practiced movements, he sliced a perfect cut of the meat. Crimson dragon meat contains fire essence, so its flavor is naturally bold. To enhance it, we'll drizzle fruit juice over it for an elegant twist. Today's choice, grape juice. The meat's flavor is already excellent. But this will make it truly unforgettable for my first customer. Smiling as he worked, Yoo Seungwoo thought, as expected, cooking is really fun. Meanwhile, Baek Hang-hyuk, watching him cook, jolted in shock as he heard a faint scream from the meat. Startled, he asked, did I just imagine that? He stared at Yoo Seungwoo's serene smile and asked nervously, I swear I just heard the meat scream. Baek Hang-hyuk stared nervously at Yoo Seungwoo, who was smiling warmly. Did I really hear the meat scream? Yoo Seungwoo, still focused on cooking, casually replied, scream? Nah, probably not. Baek Hang-hyuk wasn't convinced, are you sure? With a final touch, Yoo Seungwoo sprinkled seasoning onto the steak, placed a stalk of celery beside it, and set the plate in front of Baek Hang-hyuk. All done, a beautifully aromatic steak sat on the table. Baek Hang-hyuk furrowed his brows, scrutinizing the dish. He glanced up at Yoo Seungwoo, silently sizing him up. I have to admit, this guy is impressive. Yoo Seungwoo smiled at him cheerfully, breaking the silence. Baek Hang-hyuk smirked arrogantly, your flambe technique wasn't bad. Your flame skills are decent too. Surprised, Yoo Seungwoo asked, are you complimenting me? Without answering, Baek Hang-hyuk eagerly picked up a knife and fork. Pressing into the steak, he noticed the faint fruity aroma and perfectly seared crust. Grinning, he muttered, this must be amazing. Pausing, he looked up at Yoo Seungwoo. Wait, what's this dish called? Yoo Seungwoo replied with a calm smile, Roy's steak. Baek Hang-hyuk, intrigued, started cutting, never heard of it before. But let's find out how it tastes. However, as much as he tried, the steak wouldn't yield to his knife. Shocked, he put more strength into it, gritting his teeth and yelling as he struggled. The meat didn't budge, panting and sweating. He stared at Yoo Seungwoo, hey, why is this so hard to cut? Yoo Seungwoo raised an eyebrow. Oh, standing up, Yoo Seungwoo took the plate, let me cut it for you, he thought smugly to himself. This weakling doesn't stand a chance against this steak. As he sliced effortlessly through the meat, His mind wandered. Kyle Royce, he recalled his time in another world, standing in a cave. Facing a formidable opponent, a massive Crimson Dragon, the elder of the Crimson Dragon clan and the Demon King's right-hand guardian for 800 years, Kyle Royce had been a grueling adversary. It took everything I had to defeat it. Meanwhile, Baek Hang Hyuk sat slumped, muttering in despair, guess knives can't cut through this thing, huh? But when he looked back, the steak was already perfectly sliced. His eyes narrowed. You cut it already? Yoo Seungwoo smiled. You must be tired, embarrassed. Baek Hang Hyuk picked up a piece of steak. Yeah, maybe, anyway. Let me give it a try. He popped the meat into his mouth and bit down. The moment it hit his taste buds, an explosion of flavor lit up his eyes. Suddenly, Baek Hang Hyuk collapsed onto the table, his body trembling. Oh. Yoo Seungwoo watched with a raised brow. Oh. Baek Hang Hyuk abruptly let out a fiery breath. Wah, clutching his mouth, he mumbled incoherently, MMMPH, am I breathing fire? He flailed, his muffled words barely discernible. MMMPH, this doesn't taste good at all. Yoo Seungwoo smirked proudly, of course. I intentionally made it bad. Baek Hang Hyuk's eyes blazed with fury. MMMPH, what did you just say? Slamming his hand on the table, Yoo Seungwoo declared dramatically. A truly exceptional dish must be eaten for survival and to gain strength. Baek Hang Hyuk, clutching his flaming mouth, panicked, why can't I spit this out? His mind raced, do I just keep chewing? But it's so spicy, my only option is to swallow it? Resolving himself, he gulped down the entire piece of meat. As the piece of meat slid into Baek Hang Hyuk's stomach, his body felt like it was about to explode, his eyes grew heavy, and with a thud, he collapsed flat onto the floor. Yoo Seungwoo glanced down at him, smiling calmly, even as he teetered on the edge of unconsciousness. Baek Hang Hyuk muttered weakly, it tasted so bad. An hour later, Baek Hang Hyuk jolted upright, clutching his throat and coughing violently. He looked over to see Yoo Seungwoo lounging on the sofa, yawning lazily, clearly uninterested, in rage. Baek Hang Hyuk leapt to his feet, shouting, you almost killed me. As he yelled, he kicked at Yoo Seungwoo. And you're just sitting there yawning? Yoo Seungwoo caught his foot effortlessly, surprising Baek Hang Hyuk. With a sigh, he said, that's all you got after eating? Pathetic. He thought back to the steak. That was a 3-star meal. Kyle Roy's steak, plus 2 horsepower, plus 3 fire resistance, plus 3 strength, dragon's power unlocked, and this guy can't even handle it. Baek Hang Hyuk pointed at himself in disbelief. You're calling me weak? Yoo Seungwoo casually flicked his foot away. Yeah, you. The statement left Baek Hang Hyuk reeling. He stumbled back in shock. Me? Regaining his composure, he dashed toward Yoo Seungwoo, shouting, weak? I'm Baek Hang Hyuk, a frontline hunter. But before he could make contact, Yoo Seungwoo extended a finger and flicked his forehead. The force sent Baek Hang Hyuk flying backward, crashing to the floor once again. Yoo Seungwoo frowned slightly. If you're mad, keep it under control. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. I'm going back to sleep. As he glanced at his phone, Baek Hang Hyuk's earlier words lingered in his mind. Frontline? What's with the big talk? Curious, he searched the web and stumbled upon information that made him freeze. The top 100 hunters in the world. The page read, looking down at the groaning Baek Hang Hyuk sprawled on the floor. Yoo Seungwoo's eyes widened in disbelief. This weakling is one of the world's top 100 hunters? He sat back, deep in thought. The Earth's doomed. But honestly, I don't feel like getting involved. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Aha, he muttered, his lips curling into a mischievous grin as he eyed Baek Hang Hyuk writhing on the floor. The sky was pitch black, shrouded in darkness, with the sudden appearance of spatial gates. A new profession emerged to combat the ever-increasing number of monsters. Hunters. And among them, the top 100 hunters in the world banded together under the name First Order. Amidst the rain, in a modest house, Baek Hang Hyuk was on his knees, bowing deeply. His voice sincere and loud. I truly apologize. Yoo Seungwoo, sitting casually in a chair, showed no sympathy, taking a sip of water. He said calmly. You're kneeling just because I'm stronger than you? He leaned forward, peering at Baek Hang Hyuk. Do you pull this stunt at other restaurants too? Kneeling below, Baek Hang Hyuk rubbed his hands together nervously, forcing an awkward laugh in response. Seeing this, Yoo Seungwoo nodded knowingly, taking another sip of water. I figured as much, I can see right through you. Pausing, he seemed to remember something, then mused aloud, speaking of which, do people wear shoes more often nowadays? Baek Hang Hyuk's face grew serious. In his mind, he confirmed, there's no doubt. This guy is a foreigner. If I mess up, he might kill me on the spot. Breaking the tension, Yoo Seungwoo set the glass down with a firm clink and said, "Good." Crossing his arms with an air of authority, he continued, "I'm going to turn you into someone completely different from who you are now." Confused, Baek Hang-hyuk blinked, Okay?" Yoo Seung-woo's face darkened in displeasure. He explained sternly, "You're part of First Order. You need to become stronger to protect this planet, right?" Baek Hang-hyuk hesitated, his expression uncertain, but before he could finish, Yoo Seung-woo interrupted energetically. "Education is about surpassing limits in both skill and knowledge. It's about guiding someone back to the right path and teaching them to become truly exceptional. Therefore, I'll educate you." Still on his knees, Baek Hang-hyuk stared up with wide eyes. Speechless, after a moment, he slumped slightly and muttered, "What if I refuse?" Yoo Seung-woo immediately adopted a fearsome demeanor, sending chills down Baek Hang-hyuk's spine. Realizing he couldn't back out, Baek Hang-hyuk quickly raised one hand high and declared, "Please teach me, sir." Pleased with the response, Yoo Seung-woo nodded in approval. Good boy. He then energetically launched into his lesson. "First, I'll give you some basic knowledge about humans. Humans are loving creatures, yet also pitiable. For example, when you see someone pitiful, you begin to feel pity for them." As Yoo Seung-woo went on, Baek Hang-hyuk sat there, helpless, enduring the endless lecture that seemed to pierce his ears like daggers. His internal torment only grew as Yoo Seung-woo's words continued to flow relentlessly. At this point, Baek Hang-hyuk, with ears practically bleeding from the endless lecture, rubbed his head in frustration. Bitterly, he thought, "This fossil. This really has no end. By the time he's done, I could probably build a 14-story building with the number of words he's thrown at me." Unable to take it any longer, he blurted out, "Wait. Sir, what was your previous job?" Yoo Seung-woo replied calmly, "I used to be a high school teacher." Baek Hang-hyuk's eyes lit up with realization. "Philosophy teacher?" Seeing the guess, Yoo Seung-woo nodded in approval. "Sharp. Your intuition isn't bad." He clapped his hands, resetting the atmosphere. "Now," he said brightly, "you must learn the values and importance of food." Hearing this, Baek Hang-hyuk became agitated and pointed to the dish from earlier. "You're calling that food? Anyone can see it's a chemical weapon." Yoo Seung-woo frowned, looking displeased. "Do you think that's something you should say to someone who spent so much time cooking it?" "You're acting like..." Before he could continue, Baek Hang-hyuk flailed his arms in panic. I get it, please stop," Yoo Seung-woo concluded matter-of-factly. "Koreans don't waste food." Reluctantly, Baek Hang-hyuk picked up the plate, his expression resigned. "So, you're saying I have to finish this dish?" Yoo Seung-woo nodded serenely. "Exactly." Hearing the confirmation, Baek Hang-hyuk was so shocked he felt his soul leave his body. Grudgingly, he picked up the plate and muttered, "I don't want to eat this. I can't eat this." Standing beside him, Yoo Seung-woo placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, smirking. "Don't worry, you'll get used to it." Unable to change his mind, Baek Hang-hyuk, in an outburst of defiance, tried to throw the plate away. "I said no, this isn't even food." But Yoo Seung-woo swiftly stopped him and replied calmly, "Isn't there something you shouldn't say in front of the person who cooked it?" Hearing that, Baek Hang-hyuk's tears streamed down his face as he trembled. "I can't." Yoo Seung-woo's expression darkened. "You can." What followed was a merciless scene. Yoo Seung-woo force-fed the entire plate of food into Baek Hang-hyuk's mouth before he could resist. As the taste hit his palate, Baek Hang-hyuk's eyes widened in despair. And he internally screamed, "Mom!" Shortly after, he collapsed to the floor, defeated. Meanwhile, Yoo Seung-woo picked up the empty plate, showing no sympathy as he stared down at him. To avoid any complications, he crouched down, grabbed Baek Hang-hyuk by the ankles, and began dragging him away, muttering to himself, "If this guy wakes up, he's definitely going to call HYU and make a scene." As he dragged the unconscious Baek Hang-hyuk, he continued thinking, "I can't let that happen. I'll make sure he digests all of it. I truly don't want this planet to be destroyed." Yoo Seung-woo said, a sinister expression spreading across his face. "That's why all of you need to get much stronger." At night, inside Isaac's headquarters, a hand holding a pen tapped lightly on a desk. It belonged to Wang Ji-yun, who sat with a worried expression. "We've lost contact with him for 2 days now," she said, her voice tense. Nearby, Min Ok-hee stood silently, holding a black dagger. He responded calmly, "Is that why you called me?" She sighed in resignation. "It's because it's Baek Hang-hyuk. He wouldn't be kidnapped, detained for interrogation, or taken as a hostage." Min quickly replied, "Of course not. The head of First Order couldn't possibly be weak enough to get kidnapped or defeated." He let out a sigh and added, "Maybe he's hiding somewhere after causing some kind of trouble. Or it could be because of a woman." Wang Ji-yun, clearly worried, countered, I'm concerned. We only have 1 day to prepare for combat. And this is a very critical time. Frustrated, Min rubbed his temples. Then, with determination, he sheathed his dagger behind his back. That troublesome fool, I'll go find him. In the meantime, you get everything ready. She sat silently, watching him with a hopeful gaze as he strode out into the rainy night. He hurried through the darkness, stopping at a particular spot. Clutching his stomach in frustration, he muttered, I really don't want to use this guilt to track down someone as annoying as him. Ah, seriously, he knelt on the ground. Scanning his surroundings, closing his eyes. He concentrated, a familiar energy signature emerged. And his eyes snapped open. Standing up, he turned toward the direction of the signal. Found him, at Yoo Seungwoo's place. Min arrived, noticing the closed sign hanging on the door. He muttered to himself, what on earth is he doing here? He grabbed the door handle but found it locked. With no other choice, he pulled out his lock-picking tools. Thinking, this lock is no match for me. The sound of clicks echoed as he effortlessly opened the door and slipped inside. Carefully, he surveyed his surroundings. He's definitely in the basement. He whispered. As he moved further in, a dark figure suddenly appeared behind him. Sensing the presence, Min turned sharply. It was Yoo Seungwoo, his expression unwelcoming. Do you know what trespassing means? Caught off guard, Min stammered. What? Yoo Seungwoo's lips curled into a deadly smile. This is just self-defense. In the basement. Baek Hang-hyuk was diligently digging. Exhausted, he set his tools down and panted. I might actually die down here. Suddenly, he heard noises coming from the staircase. His eyes widened as he realized. Could it be? Sure enough, he called out excitedly. Min, I knew you'd come. I knew you'd save me. But when he saw Min's expressionless face, his enthusiasm wavered. Rushing forward, he asked eagerly, where's the way out? Min, however, ignored him completely. Confused, Baek Hang-hyuk called out again. Min? Min picked up the digging tool. His voice flat, I got caught too. Hearing those words, Baek Hang-hyuk's spirit crumbled instantly. In the basement, Hang-hyuk and Min were frantically digging a tunnel. After a while, they set their tools down and collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. Min, clearly frustrated, muttered, what the hell am I even doing right now? Hang-hyuk, resigned to his fate, replied calmly, isn't it obvious? We're digging a tunnel. Hearing that, Min clenched his fists in anger and shouted. Do you think I don't know that? Why did you have to provoke that monster in the first place? Slumping to his knees, Min clutched his aching back. Unbothered, Hang-hyuk added, I didn't know it was that strong. It's practically a monster, wiping the sweat from his brow. He sat down next to Min and continued seriously. Compared to your abilities, how strong would you say that thing is? You've met Haken before, right? Still grimacing in pain. Min replied, yeah, I've met him, Haken, the 6th rank in first order. The returning hero, struggling to his feet while nursing his back. Min added, but this is on a whole other level. Compared to that level 85 guy, Ha-sun's strength is just unfathomable. Hang-hyuk nodded thoughtfully, yeah, you're right, there's no comparison. But seriously, are you going to keep working? Aren't you going to take a break? Min, clearly annoyed, snapped back, take a break? What break? Becoming visibly agitated, he grabbed the digging tool and pointed it at Hang-hyuk. Yelling, I have to pay back the idiot who pissed off that monster first. But in the end, he couldn't bring himself to act on his frustration. Moments later, Hang-hyuk calmly took the tool back, saying, which is why I'm already helping with your share of the work. Still trembling from overexertion, Min struggled to retort, shut up. This is all your fault. Hang-hyuk sighed deeply and said, there's a bigger problem ahead. The boss monster will likely show up soon. And if we're stuck here when it does, understanding the gravity of the situation, Min reluctantly admitted, of course it's a problem. After all, we're the highest ranked hunters in Zone A. Suddenly, Hang-hyuk's stomach growled loudly, breaking the tension. Embarrassed, he scratched his head and stammered, don't look at me like that. I mean, come on, working this much? Of course I'm hungry. Min sighed in exasperation, you're so carefree. Anyway, let's just apologize to him and ask him to let us out. Startled, Hang-hyuk widened his eyes, do you really think you'll just let us go if we apologize? Min brushed the dust off his sleeves and replied coldly. Explain the situation to him. He'll understand. Besides, Min's tone softened slightly. That guy's magical energy. It's strangely pure. Scene change. Yoo Seungwoo's perspective, standing with his arms crossed. Yoo Seungwoo said seriously, fine, I'll let you out. Hang Hyuk, stunned, exclaimed, really? In contrast, Min quickly bowed his head and said sincerely, thank you. Seeing Min's sincerity, Seungwoo turned his gaze toward him and replied calmly. You're Min O'Keefe, right? I won't bother with honorifics. They're a hassle. Unbothered, Min responded, that's fine. How do you know my name? Seungwoo casually pulled out his phone. I looked it up online. He said, much to the astonishment of the two hunters. After that, Seungwoo tied on an apron and said, wait here for a moment. Even though the restaurant hasn't officially opened, it wouldn't be right to let my guests leave with an empty stomach. So, I'll prepare a meal, Yoo Seungwoo said calmly. Hearing this, Hang Hyuk slammed the table and yelled, no thanks. It'll taste bad. Unbothered by his reaction, Seungwoo replied indifferently. I figured you'd say that, so, let me ask. Between a delicious dish and a bad one, which would you choose? The odd question left Hang Hyuk momentarily confused. What kind of question is that? Who would ever choose something bad? Obviously, the delicious one. Nodding, Seungwoo turned to the kitchen. After glancing over the ingredients, he said, alright, I'll make foil-baked salmon. I have some leftover salmon fillets for this. Hearing this, Hang Hyuk cheered, raising both hands enthusiastically. While Min seemed a bit skeptical, you decided just like that? Min, appearing thoughtful, continued, in that case, I'll also. Before he could finish his sentence, a realization struck him. Wait a second, why is he making us choose in the first place? This is strange, I need to think about this. After pondering for a while, Min spoke seriously. I'll take the bad dish, please. This left Hang Hyuk speechless and confused, while Seungwoo's eyes lit up with delight. Oh, someone with a spirit of challenge, excellent. With that, Seungwoo immediately went to the fridge, retrieved ingredients, and set them on the cutting board. He expertly handled the knife, preparing the ingredients with practiced ease, selecting a bottle of cooking wine. He poured just the right amount over the prepared salmon fillets. As the fish absorbed the seasonings, he moved on to prepping other ingredients. From a distance, Min observed Seungwoo's professional cooking skills and remarked with admiration, impressive. Meanwhile, Hang Hyuk, sitting nearby, couldn't hold back his curiosity. What were you thinking? Why did you pick the bad dish? Are you an idiot? Resting his chin on his hand, Min sighed, I'm starting to regret it too. Your dish looks great. Hang Hyuk, glancing at Seungwoo, added. Also, isn't it strange? Normally, you leave salmon for 5 to 10 minutes to get rid of the fishy smell. Min explained. Didn't you notice? He's seasoning the fish and pouring wine and salt over it longer than usual. It's a unique way to neutralize the smell, by now. Seungwoo had wrapped the salmon neatly in foil and placed it on a pan. Covering it tightly with a lid, he turned on the heat to start cooking. Looking at the dish in front of him, Yoo Seungwoo said calmly. This is almost done, the rest will be ready after a little cooking. Turning to Min, he asked, by the way, do you like kidney or liver? Min quickly replied, yes, a little. Then, rubbing his stomach, he added, but I have a bit of gastritis. Hearing this, Yoo Seungwoo looked mildly concerned. That's not a condition that lets you maintain combat readiness for long periods. Meanwhile, Hang Hyuk couldn't hold back his amusement and smugly teased Min. Exactly, this guy can't last 5 minutes in a fight without huffing and puffing. Lagging behind, Min, clearly annoyed, clenched his fists in anger. Sensing the tension, Yoo Seungwoo placed a thoughtful hand on his chin and said, in that case, you'll need something suitable for a patient. With that, he headed into the kitchen and began selecting the necessary ingredients for a new dish. Before long, he was fully engrossed in preparing a meal for Min. On the other side, Hang Hyuk, with a disappointed sigh, muttered, I thought he was going to make something fancy. But it turns out it's just porridge, patting Min on the shoulder. He added playfully, lucky you, Min, it's hard to mess up porridge. After all, Min, still sulking, replied, true. Meanwhile, Yoo Seungwoo continued cooking enthusiastically. Humming to himself, soon enough, the dishes were ready. Beautifully plated, and presented to Hang Hyuk. Seeing the meal, Hang Hyuk's face lit up with joy. Finally, this is what I call food. Excitedly, he picked up his chopsticks and grabbed a piece of the dish. Quickly popping it into his mouth, the moment he tasted it, his eyes widened in amazement before transitioning to sheer delight. Overwhelmed, he slammed his hand on the table while the other eagerly grabbed more food. Damn it, this is so good, how could someone who cooks this well ever do anything evil? Min, watching his antics, sighed and said, you're spouting nonsense again. Yoo Seungwoo, satisfied with the reaction, set a dipping sauce on the table. Alright, enjoy your meal, here's some sauce. Hang Hyuk gave him a big thumbs up and replied cheerfully. With the sauce, it's even better. Min, sitting next to him, could only shake his head in exasperation, while Yoo Seungwoo, half smiling, said, got it, just don't spill it everywhere. With that, he returned to the kitchen, adding, now then, next. Min tensed up, muttering under his breath, it's my turn. Meanwhile, Yoo Seungwoo poured Min's meal into a large bowl. Back at the table, Min grew increasingly nervous, thinking, a bad dish? Why did I even ask for this? In baseball, this is what they'd call a sacrifice play. Resolving himself, Min thought, I'll eat this bad dish and uncover the meaning behind his strange question. Soon, Yoo Seungwoo placed the dish in front of Min with a polite smile. It might not look very appetizing, he said, but please enjoy. Min stared at the grotesque dish before him, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Regret started creeping into his mind. Curious, Hang Hyuk, still chewing his food, leaned over to glance at Min's dish. Is that porridge? He asked. The bowl of porridge, with its peculiar and unsettling color, remained untouched by Min. Suspicious, Hang Hyuk added, did you put uranium in it or something? Annoyed, Seungwoo retorted, no sorry, no uranium. Refusing to drop the joke, Hang Hyuk continued. What about energy drinks? Why does it look so weird? He waved his hand dismissively and remarked. This doesn't look edible at all. Min, however, didn't respond. He simply stared intently at the bowl, deep in thought. Seeing no reply, Hang Hyuk leaned closer and nudged him. Hey, what's wrong? At this point, Min had noticed something unusual about the dish. Internally, he assessed the color and the way the magical energy ripples. It's unmistakable. This is a dish with the properties of a healing elixir. To create something like this on the spot? Even specialists can't preserve pure magical energy this well. Looking back at Seungwoo, who was smiling warmly, Min began to suspect even more. To confirm his theory, Min hesitantly asked. Is this what I think it is? Realizing that Min had caught on, Seungwoo placed a finger to his lips, signaling for secrecy. Min understood the gesture and thought to himself. So I'm not allowed to talk about it. Well, whatever, if I eat this, I'll regain my strength. Let's give it a try. Resolving to taste it, Min took a small bite of the porridge. Instantly, he felt his energy returning, his fatigue melting away. However, along with the revitalization came another realization. Grimacing slightly, he muttered under his breath. Why does it taste like iron and lead? Still hesitating, Min stared at the dish before him. If I want to fully recover, I have to eat it all, he thought. Resolving himself, he decided to power through and finish the food in front of him. Meanwhile, across from him, Hang Hyuk was enjoying his meal with gusto, savoring every bite. 30 minutes later, Min finally finished his portion. He sat back quietly in his chair, looking as if he had just narrowly escaped death. On the other hand, Hang Hyuk, feeling rejuvenated from the delicious food, exclaimed energetically, that was amazing. Huh? What's wrong? Noticing Min's disheartened demeanor, he leaned forward, concerned. You okay? At that moment, Min began to feel the effects of the meal. His body was recovering rapidly, his injured stomach had healed, his energy levels were replenished, and an unfamiliar sense of comfort and vitality spread through him. Min's eyes brightened with newfound life. It's been such a long time since I felt this good. Seeing Min's sudden transformation, Hang Hyuk couldn't help but ask. What just happened? Without responding, Min suddenly bowed deeply toward Seungwoo. Thank you, I'll never forget this kindness. This left Hang Hyuk utterly baffled. Huh? What's going on? Seungwoo, pleased with the gratitude, crossed his arms and replied, it's nothing. Hang Hyuk, still confused by the heartfelt exchange, interrupted, waving his hand, hey, wait, what's with this atmosphere? Someone explain what's happening. Frustrated by the lack of answers, Hang Hyuk pointed aggressively with his finger and declared, another serving, please. Moments later, a mountain of food disappeared into Hang Hyuk's stomach. Leaning back in his chair, now sporting a large belly, he sighed contentedly. Ah, I'm alive again. Meanwhile, Min turned serious, fixing his gaze on Seungwoo. So, if the boss monster shows up at the gate tomorrow, will you help us? Balancing a stack of plates in one hand, Seungwoo placed the other hand on his chin, appearing deep in thought. About that. Before he could finish, Hang Hyuk draped an arm over Min's shoulder and waved a finger dismissively. No way. Confused, Min frowned. What do you mean? Hang Hyuk pointed towards Seungwoo and explained. The owner is a regressor. Ridiculously strong. Someone that powerful won't step in to help us fight. The owner has his own reasons, Hang Hyuk continued confidently. If he wanted to help us fight, he would have just said so. With a smug expression. He winked and added, he probably doesn't want to get involved because of us. On the side, Seungwoo crossed his arms, listening intently. He seemed surprised that Hang Hyuk had correctly understood his perspective. Meanwhile, Hang Hyuk kept rambling, if the owner stepped in, the fight would be too easy. But then what? We'd lose the chance to train and become stronger ourselves. Hearing the logic in his argument, Min nodded slowly. That's true, seeing that he was gradually convincing Min. Hang Hyuk raised one hand excitedly and declared, so, what I'm saying is this. We must overcome our difficulties and grow stronger on our own. That's what really matters. Seungwoo, standing nearby, clapped his hands lightly in acknowledgement. Oh, it seemed like Min was persuaded, until he suddenly turned back with a displeased look. That's ridiculous, Hang Hyuk froze, his enthusiasm deflating instantly. What? Min seized the opportunity and stepped closer. Jabbing a finger at Hang Hyuk, cut the nonsense. Beck Hang Hyuk, caught off guard, Hang Hyuk laughed nervously. Feigning ignorance, what do you mean? Min, growing even more irritated, pointed a finger to his forehead. If he's as active on the battlefield as you're claiming, the Hunter Association would definitely know about him. He'd have a ranking in first order. The pointed statement left Hang Hyuk momentarily speechless. He averted his eyes, trying to avoid further confrontation. Noticing this, Min pressed on, jabbing his finger harder. Getting knocked from rank 100 to 101 and losing your spot, aren't you worried about that? At this point, Seungwoo finally grasped the situation and sighed. Ah, so that's how it is. Realizing that Min had hit the nail on the head, Hang Hyuk scratched his head sheepishly. You got me. Min immediately turned to Seungwoo, pointing accusingly at Hang Hyuk. See, that's the kind of person he is. Seungwoo could only sigh in exasperation. I won't bother trying to turn him into a respectable person anymore. Leaning on his hand, he continued casually, but you're not entirely wrong. I've seen many kingdoms that relied too heavily on a single hero. Once that hero fell, he paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The entire kingdom was doomed. Hearing Seungwoo's warning, Min dropped his argument, standing up resolutely. If that's the case, we won't trouble you further. Let's go. Beck Hang Hyuk. Hearing this, Seungwoo's expression softened, and he leaned casually against the counter. Arms crossed, with a hint of concern, he asked. Would you like to stop by here more often? I won't charge you. Pointing toward Hang Hyuk, he added with a smirk. Oh, and Beck, make sure you visit me regularly. All right? Caught off guard as he was about to leave, Hang Hyuk waved his hands in panic. No way. Moments later, the two left the restaurant. Outside, under the night sky, the pair walked along the street. Hugging himself, Hang Hyuk slouched and complained. Even 10 servings is too much for me. Hearing this, Min glared at him and scolded. 10 servings of free food? What are you, a pig? Unable to take Min's nagging anymore, Hang Hyuk clenched his fists and shouted angrily. Shut up, that porridge with that smell, it was disgusting. Min sighed, shaking his head in exasperation. The porridge smelled? He'll understand one day, Min thought to himself. Today's opportunity was a stroke of luck for me. The next day, on the battlefield, a towering, six-eyed monster roared ferociously, its massive form dominating the landscape. In the distance, Hang Hyuk and Min stood observing the beast. From above, helicopters began appearing in the sky. Seeing this, Min looked up and said, They're here, Hang Hyuk, at the ready. Hang Hyuk began loading his weapon, glancing at Min. You're in good shape, right? Min, pulling out his dagger and preparing for combat, replied. Yeah, more or less. Feeling energized, Hang Hyuk grinned and said, all right then. He loosened the top button of his shirt, rolling his shoulders. The two charged forward together, excitement in their eyes. Let's do this. Elsewhere, on a news broadcast, a female reporter spoke with urgency. This morning, a dangerous new species of monster has been spotted in Zone A. Shortly after, the screen showed footage of the monster lying defeated. The news continued, thanks to the superstar team of Beck Hang Hyuk and Orders No. 2. Min O'Keefe, the monster has been eliminated. The broadcast went on. The Korean government has awarded medals to the entire hunting team. However, Hunter Beck Hang Hyuk declined an interview, citing digestive issues from overeating. Meanwhile, Yoo Seungwoo calmly ate breakfast while watching the news, unfazed by the mention of Hang Hyuk's digestion troubles. He casually praised, impressive, good job, reflecting to himself. He thought, honestly, when I head to the gate and the dimensional rift starts fluctuating, the monsters can sense the danger. That's when they migrate to areas without proper barricades, putting civilians at risk. He took a sip of water and continued mentally. So, hunters like them are essential to protecting this world. Finishing his thoughts, Seungwoo stood up and stretched leisurely. 1 week left until the grand opening, he said enthusiastically. Walking toward a nearby window, he gazed at the scenery outside. Leaning comfortably on the windowsill. Let's get ready for today too, he said with a smile. Suddenly, he noticed something unusual. Huh? A pair of animal legs walked past, on 2 feet. Curious, he looked closer as the creature approached his door. When it arrived, the animal stood politely and greeted him. Hello. Startled but maintaining his composure, Seungwoo quickly went to open the door and replied warmly. Oh, hi there. The creature, carrying a large box, held it up enthusiastically. Your delivery has arrived, it airfully. The sky was blue, the clouds were white, it was a beautiful day. Inside the house, an adorable cat paw waved in the air. Arapaws, with a cheerful expression, said excitedly. So, can I sit now? Seungwoo nodded. Go ahead. With a soft plop, Arapaws leapt onto the chair. Though it had the appearance and habits of a cat, Arapaws was incredibly intelligent. Happily licking its paw, it showcased its natural talents. As a creature with more taste buds than humans, Arapaws was an excellent cook. Its other senses, like smell and hearing, were also far superior to those of humans. Seungwoo rested his chin in his hand, tilting his head as he watched. And they're always eager to take care of others, he mused. In his mind, he silently listed Arapaw's capabilities, everything from housekeeping to field medic. It was almost endless. And their versatility made them an invaluable support to warriors. He paused, recalling some past memories. Then, he chuckled softly. But, because Arapaws was so attentive, it often turned warriors into literal gluttons. Seungwoo vividly remembered someone once telling their Arapaws. It's fine, I'll just stop being a warrior. Shaking his head, he muttered. That's why it earned the nickname, the Glutton Maker. There was even a time when 2 warriors had an endless argument about their Arapaws. Ours is cuter, isn't it? Don't be ridiculous. Ours is way cuter. Seungwoo sighed wistfully. Back then, I was so envious. I really wanted an Arapaws while I was in the army, but... He suddenly yelled into the sky. Goddess, can't you send me just 1 Arapaws? I'm the only one without a cat. Above, the goddess Gaia snapped irritably. I'm swamped. If you want one, go find it yourself. The veins on Seungwoo's forehead throbbed as he remembered the moment. Even now, it still irritates me. With hands on his hips, he glanced down at Arapaws. Anyway. Renato asked for slime pudding. And you were sent here along with it? Arapaws stared at him with big, round eyes and let out a soft meow. Waving his hand in a calming motion, Seungwoo said, Listen. I'm not a warrior anymore. I'm a restaurant owner. If your fur ends up everywhere, I won't be able to run this business. Suddenly, Arapaws leaned forward confidently. My fur doesn't shed. Go ahead, pull it and see. Surprise. Seungwoo blinked. What? Following its suggestion, he reached out and gave a small tug. To his amazement, no fur came loose. A satisfied smile spread across his lips. Truly versatile. Gently stroking Arapaws, he asked, So, how did you get all the way here? Arapaws puffed up with pride and stood tall. I defeated a god to get here. Seungwoo stared at it, incredulous. What? With an exaggerated smugness. Arapaws rubbed its chin and said, Nah, just kidding. At that moment, Arapaws recalled meeting the cat god seated on a grand throne. Trembling, it dared not utter a single word. The cat god, with a cold demeanor, simply said, No. But Arapaws, with sparkling eyes, gazed pleadingly at the cat god, silently begging, Please, oh great cat god. The cat god, however, turned away indifferently, leaving Arapaws utterly shocked. Stop trying to look cute. You're a dangerous creature. Tears streamed down Arapaws' face like rain. But the cat god sighed heavily. It's not that I don't care. But I have no idea just how dangerous you might be. Hearing this, Arapaws quickly stopped crying and struck a self-absorbed pose. Well, it's because I'm super cool. Way cooler than other species. The cat god was left speechless, choking on its words. With furrowed brows, the cat god finally thought, I have to let it go. If I don't, it'll just run off to find another warrior anyway. Under the shade of a lush green tree, Arapaw sat dejectedly at the base of the trunk. Why haven't I met any warriors yet? This is so unfair. Suddenly, a blue butterfly fluttered by. Catching its attention, is it, me? The butterfly gently landed on a flower but quickly flew away again. Arapaw's gaze remained fixed on the butterfly as it disappeared into the distance. It suddenly had an epiphany. I see now. I'm not compatible with warriors. Its eyes lit up with determination. No. It's because I'm not skilled enough yet. From that day forward, Arapaw began training relentlessly. Punch after punch landed on a scarecrow as it shouted with vigor. Cat punch. In addition to physical training, it diligently studied all kinds of books, determined to master both martial and academic arts. I'll become stronger and smarter. I'll become a super cat, it vowed. After hearing the story, Seungwoo could only manage a strained smile. So, because of all that training. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You defeated the cat god? Is that what you're saying? Arapaw stood proudly. Hands on its hips. Exactly. Seungwoo felt a sudden headache forming. Why on earth did Renato send this thing here? His face darkened slightly as he muttered to himself. Only Gree and Theo could possibly understand this level of suffering. Glancing at Arapaw, Seungwoo sighed. This cat is something else. Out loud. He said with a weary voice. But I've already retired. Arapaw stared at him with sparkling eyes. And beads of cold sweat began to form on Seungwoo's forehead. Seungwoo turned his head and cleared his throat softly. If you want to work here, I'll hire you. Arapaw leapt into the air with excitement. Thank you. Jumping down from the chair, it walked up to Seungwoo, bowed respectfully, and said, I'll be in your care from now on. Seungwoo, smiling brightly, gestured toward a spot nearby. Over there, please. As Arapaw moved, Seungwoo rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Since your name is Niobe, your nickname should be. He smiled and patted its head gently. Nabi, let's work hard together from now on. Nabi. And with that, the Warriors' Diner officially gained a new employee. From afar, two shadowy figures lurked behind a large wall. Spying on the diner, the tall, slender man was Vane Otashik, the owner of a nearby cafe. The other, shorter figure was Park Dalsu, the proprietor of Lijiang. Both were using binoculars to closely observe the diner. Park Dalsu muttered under his breath. That shop, it appeared out of nowhere. Lowering his binoculars, he added grimly, business is war. Otashik immediately replied. Like a game of capture the flag. So. Dalsu continued. This new restaurant is the enemy, resolute. The two men strode purposefully toward the diner. In that case, Dalsu said, glancing at Otashik. Let's defeat this enemy together. The two men stared intently at Seungwoo's restaurant, determination gleaming in their eyes. Let's destroy the enemy, said Dalsu, furiously rolling up his sleeves. Do you see that? He growled, pointing at the coffee machine visible through the window. Taesik's expression turned sly. It looks like a very expensive coffee machine. From the outside, both glared at the restaurant in displeasure. A diner serving coffee? How pretentious. Taesik snapped. Is he trying to one-up the great cafeo? Without needing further discussion, both came to the same conclusion. Should we use the same tactic as before and hit them with a first strike attack? Like with that other cafe? Good idea. But just then, they noticed a bouquet of flowers outside the restaurant. Huh? Two congratulatory cards adorned the bouquet. One read, please serve only delicious food. Baek Hanghyuk. The other, congratulations on the opening, Min Okif. Both men froze as they read the names. Trembling, number 1 on the order. Baek Hanghyuk. Number 2, Min Okif. Dalsu stammered. They've already established relationships with those big names? Taesik muttered, his voice shaking. Dalsu, frustrated, yanked at his scarf. Looks like someone's been playing dirty. Courting customers at the gate behind our backs. The two exchanged worried glances. Their faces reflected a mix of dread and resolve. This isn't good, Dalsu said, clenching his fists. That restaurant. It's too much of an eyesore. Let's regroup and prepare properly before coming back. In a flash, the two shadows darted away. Just as they were retreating, two small fingers tapped lightly on the window. Startled, they turned to see Nabi standing there, waving cheerfully. Are you two customers? Nabi asked, its eyes sparkling with friendliness. Taesik leapt back in surprise. Ah, arrow pose. Dalsu's jaw dropped. An arrow pose that can talk? Nabi's eyes brightened. Oh, you're customers, please, come in. Before they could protest, The nimble aeropos had already ushered them inside with quick, fluid movements. Seated in the restaurant, the two men sat in stunned silence, observing Nabi as it bustled around, preparing the table. Leaning over, Dal Su whispered, "Mr. Park, that aeropos, it's definitely a monster, right?" Taesik, watching nervously, muttered, "Not a monster, no. It looks like a trained beast person." Dal Su smirked and waved dismissively. "Well, that's fine, I'll show it what real class looks like." Reaching out, he swiped a finger across the table. He inspected it and froze. "Impossible, what? Did you find fur?" Taesik asked. Dal Su stared at his spotless finger in disbelief. "Not a speck of dust." Both men glanced around the restaurant, their heads swiveling as they took in the gleaming cleanliness. "This place, it's too clean," Dal Su muttered, his voice cracking. Taesik clutched his head in despair. "I've run places that violated health codes 3 times, and even I can't find anything to criticize here. How is there not a single hair anywhere?" Just then, Nabi placed 2 glasses of water on the table with meticulous care. "I don't shed fur," it said brightly, adjusting its apron. Both men, drawn in by curiosity, reached out to touch Nabi's fur. "You really don't shed? But it's so soft." Taesik looked around, still baffled. "Even if that's true, this place is too clean. Maybe they hire a cleaning company?" Nabi, without missing a beat, replied. "Cleaning is my job." Taesik stared at it for a long moment, his expression one of utter defeat. Finally, he muttered, "I'm so jealous. I need an aeropos like this." Breaking the silence, Nabi cheerfully held up a menu. "Please, place your orders." Dal Su gestured subtly with his hand, signaling. First attempt to find faults failed. "Let's move on to the second plan." Taesik, sharing the sentiment, gave a nod of agreement. Dal Su cheerfully placed his hand on the menu. "We'll have the special of the day. 2 plates, please." Nabi, brimming with enthusiasm, quickly noted down the order and ran off. "Got it. I'll let the chef know." Seungwoo emerged from the kitchen, looking curious. "They ordered the special? I see." The 2 men watched him intently, whispering among themselves. "The owner's an ex-hunter? He's so good-looking." Taesik turned sharply, startled. "What did you just say?" Before Dal Su could reply, their attention was drawn to Seungwoo lifting a heavy wok high into the air, his sleeves carefully rolled up. Dal Su's eyes sparkled with admiration. "Look at those arms." He stared at Seungwoo's biceps, astonished. "That's a traditional Chinese wok. It's super heavy. How can he lift it so effortlessly? Like a painting come to life." Taesik, exasperated, slammed the table. "Mr. Park, I respect your aesthetic tastes, but have you forgotten why we're here? Focus." Feigning a cough to regain his composure, Dal Su muttered, "I'm just impressed by his skill. That's all." But his gaze betrayed him as he continued sneaking glances at Seungwoo, captivated by his precise movements. Seungwoo, meanwhile, concentrated on stir-frying the squid rice dish. Under Dal Su's intense observation, every action seemed deliberate and graceful. Dal Su murmured, "This is the first time I've seen someone put so much focus and care into cooking, with such gentle precision." From the corner of his eye, he noticed the effortless way Seungwoo handled the wok. The combination of skill, effort, and enjoyment radiated through his every gesture. Nabi soon returned with 2 plates. Carefully balancing them, with a cheerful tone, it announced, "Today's special is stir-fried squid rice." The large plates featured a blend of bright red and white colors, with an aroma that hinted at a mild spiciness. The 2 men examined the dishes closely. "I didn't expect it to be stir-fried squid rice," said Taesik. "Right," Dal Su added. "The menu did say it would be based on the ingredients available that day." Lifting one plate to inspect it closely, Dal Su noted, "The ingredients are so clear and fresh. It'd be hard to claim any allergy complaints against this." Their unspoken agreement was clear. Next up was the taste test. Both men scooped up a spoonful of the dish, tasting it in silence, breaking the quiet. Taesik asked, "Well, what do you think?" Dal Su's expression softened as he admitted, "It's good, really good," encouraged. Taesik took another bite. "Let me try." Without another word, the 2 men focused solely on finishing their meals. As the last spoonful disappeared, they set their spoons down on now empty plates. Leaning back in their chairs, they clutched their satisfied bellies. "It's truly delicious," Dal Su said with a contented sigh. "Absolutely," Taesik agreed. Equally full and impressed, Dal Su wiped his mouth with a napkin. smiling as he said, that guy is sincere about the basics. If you're Korean, you can't deny the taste of this dish. Tae-sik, equally cheerful, chimed in, he's running a business with coffee and light meals, which is quite different from how we operate. Dal-soo nodded in agreement. It's also different from my Western-style restaurant. Feeling lighter after their meal, the two handed their payment to Nabi. This place isn't bad at all, Dal-soo admitted, I think so too. Tae-sik replied with a grin. Standing by the door, Nabi waved at them, please come again. The two men waved back comfortably as they departed. Even as they walked away, their conversation lingered in the air. Maybe we should come here more often. One suggested, shouldn't we bring him something next time to build goodwill? The other replied, inside the restaurant, Seungwoo glanced at a piece of paper in his hand. Smiling faintly, Nabi, curious, leapt up beside him, what's that? He handed the paper to Nabi and explained, it's a blacklist from Kanghyuk. Their names are on it, with a proud look. Seungwoo added, I won them over with just stir-fried squid rice. Isn't that impressive? Warriors truly are the best. Chuckling softly, he lifted his cup, you got to value your neighbors. Through the window, the silhouettes of Dal-soo and Tae-sik could be seen. Strolling away with cheerful expressions, Seungwoo muttered to himself, from the start. I planned my operation so I wouldn't step on anyone else's toes. The sky outside remained a brilliant blue, almost as if in agreement with the harmony he sought. Coexistence is important. He mused, even if I've retired, I can't entirely abandon the habits of a warrior. The massive outdoor arena was packed with a roaring crowd. The cheers echoed endlessly. Drawing in waves of people, Seungwoo stood in the center of the arena, his face weary and his body covered in wounds. Panting heavily, he tightened his grip on the sword in his hand. It's so heavy. The deafening cheers from the stands continued unabated, urging him on, kill him. The audience, brimming with excitement, chanted in unison, kill him, kill him. He turned his gaze upward to the wild crowd. Their fervor showed no care for his struggle, they only wanted blood. Looking back at his opponent, he saw the man clutching a wound on his abdomen. Visibly weakened, the man panted heavily, grimacing as he spoke weakly. Just do it. Yoo Seungwoo wiped the dirt off his face and lowered his head briefly. A second later, he raised his sword high. His face filled with a sudden surge of killing intent. The crowd held their breath as he swung the blade with immense force. A single, decisive strike cutting through the air. The blade, however, landed not on his opponent but embedded itself into the ground beside him. His opponent, who had shut his eyes tightly in resignation, slowly opened them, realizing the blade had missed him. Looking up, he saw Yoo Seungwoo standing over him, shielding him. Seungwoo glanced down and smiled faintly. I'm not doing it, I'm done with this, we're nothing more than slaves to war. The crowd, dissatisfied with his refusal, erupted into boos and hurled scraps of paper into the arena. Jeering loudly, Seungwoo didn't react to their scorn. Instead, clutching his rumbling stomach, he quietly knelt and collapsed onto the ground. He tilted his head back, gazing wearily at the sky as paper littered the battlefield. I really want some kimchi soup right now. He muttered, present time. A bowl of kimchi soup, now empty, was carefully set down on the table. Min O'Keefe, cheerful and content, wiped his mouth. That was fantastic as always. Teacher, Seungwoo, sitting silently across from him, stared into the distance with a blank expression, seemingly lost in thought. Min waved his hand in front of Seungwoo's face to snap him out of it. Teacher? Seungwoo flinched slightly and replied awkwardly. Oh, it's nothing. I was just remembering something from the past. At that moment, Nabi appeared and picked up the empty bowl. The kimchi soup was delicious. Seungwoo chuckled warmly. Is this your first time trying it? Min, sipping the coffee Seungwoo handed him, grinned. I'm American, remember? I'm still not fully used to kimchi. Outside, the rain poured down in a steady, melancholic rhythm, yet inside the atmosphere was cozy and warm as the three of them enjoyed their time together. Min glanced around the restaurant, taking in the peaceful ambience. It's really nice and tranquil here. Finishing his drink, he stood up, ready to leave. That was great, teacher. Thank you. As he reached the door, Min suddenly remembered something. Oh, there's one thing I should mention. Turning back, he added, every weekend, officials from the city hall conduct inspections. Hearing this, Seungwoo's expression shifted into one of mild surprise. Inspections? For what? Min walked over to Nabi, smiling as he explained, they'll be checking to make sure there aren't any risks or dangers to the citizens. That's the reason for their visits. Seungwoo furrowed his brows, trying to recall something. Last time, they mentioned something about supporting regressors. But I didn't catch much else. Min laughed, patting Nabi affectionately on the head. That's because Nabi here is technically a worker now. Nabi purred happily, wagging its tail in response. As the three shared a lighthearted moment amidst the rainy evening, Yoo Seungwoo stood up, ruffling Nabi's fur playfully. Regressors are victims of gate accidents. They're treated kindly for a reason. Many of them were sent to this world under strange circumstances. So it's only right to be considerate. You're doing great, Min. Okay, he glanced at him, a bit uneasy. While Seungwoo tidied up the dishes, the inspectors today, are they also regressors? Seungwoo asked, let's hope there won't be any incidents. As the afternoon sunlight cast a warm glow over the restaurant, Nabi's tail swayed cheerfully as it swept the area outside the entrance. Suddenly, a man's voice called out from behind, hey there. Startled, Nabi leapt into the air with a yelp. Oh my gosh, why are you sneaking up on me like that? The man scratched his head sheepishly. Sorry, my job's a bit unusual. Did I scare you that much? Terribly, Nabi huffed, swatting him lightly with the broom. I'm Park Sung-yeon, he said, looking a little awkward. I'm really glad to meet an aeropose, but I'm sorry for startling you. Nabi blinked in surprise. You know about us? Of course, I always wanted to be a warrior. Sung-yeon admitted, smiling. Nabi's ears perked up, and it jumped excitedly. Really? A warrior? Nice to meet you. So, are you working now? Nabi's enthusiasm quickly faded as it glanced back at the restaurant. Its expression grew serious. When he's in his movie-watching mode, it's absolutely forbidden to disturb him. Sung-yeon, noticing the closed sign on the door, looked disappointed. Nabi, moved by his downcast expression, felt a pang of sympathy. Suddenly, an idea lit up in its mind. But if you're hungry... Nabi began, wagging its tail. I can cook for you personally, just not as part of the restaurant. Sung-yeon's face lit up as he clenched his fists in excitement. An aeropose cooking for me? What an honor. Nabi, brimming with confidence moments earlier, began to tremble at his request. Kimchi soup, you said? Yes, Sung-yeon repeated cheerfully. Kimchi soup, please. Nabi scrambled nervously, darting around. Kimchi soup, oh boy. This is a bit much for an aeropose. I can cook, but kimchi is still pretty foreign to me. Let me try. Dragging a chair to the counter, Nabi climbed onto it to work at eye level. With careful movements, it began slicing pork. The few other basics were soon prepared and placed into a large pot. Nabi meticulously added the pork pieces and started the broth. This part's easy, Nabi muttered to itself, staring at the bubbling pot. Its confidence wavered as it glanced nervously at the array of spices nearby. But I don't know how to season this. Panicking, Nabi dumped every spice into the pot at once. Wiping the sweat from its brow, it sighed in relief. There, that should do it, just need to add some vegetables. Suddenly, it froze. Oh no, onions. Scrambling frantically, Nabi grabbed an onion and triumphantly exclaimed, onions are the key. Yes, this has to be right. Or maybe green onions. After throwing the onion into the pot, Nabi slumped onto the floor, utterly exhausted. Park Sung-hyun crouched nearby, glancing at Nabi with a mix of pity and concern. Something feels off, he said hesitantly, peering into the pot. I think so too. Nabi mumbled from the floor. Defeated, Park Sung-hyun stared at the concoction. It's basically kimchi porridge at this point. Still, he looked at Nabi with a gentle smile. But it's the thought that counts. Thank you for your effort. The door creaked open. Yoo Seungwoo stepped out, puzzled by the scene before him. Huh? He observed the situation with a frown. Doesn't look like a regular customer. A friend? Nabi quickly responded. He's a guest visiting from TERRA. Park Sung-hyun stood up hastily, bowing slightly. I'm sorry for the intrusion. I'm Park Sung-hyun, a regressor. Seungwoo looked at him closely, noting his haggard appearance. He looks just as worn out as Min did. Must have had a rough time in TERRA. With a soft smile, Seungwoo stepped forward, slipping on his jacket. I get it now. You're here for kimchi soup, right? Sung-hyun began to rise, shaking his head. The restaurant's closed, so I wasn't planning to bother you. This place, it feels like something you've opened just for yourself. Like a kite drifting freely in the wind, Seungwoo reached out, taking the bowl Nabi had prepared. In that case, let me make you a proper dish. You'll eat what I cook instead of Nabi's version. Alright? Sung-hyun blinked in surprise but nodded. Yes, of course. Seungwoo walked toward the kitchen with calm determination, rolling up his sleeves as he went. This is the first meal for a regressor in my restaurant. His steps were deliberate, his focus unwavering. I have to make sure it's done properly. Nothing but the best hospitality will do. Yuung Wu stepped into the kitchen and lit the gas stove. He then carefully took out a piece of pork and began slicing it. It was front leg meat, also known as shoulder meat. He swiftly and precisely sliced the meat. Carefully, he placed the meat into a hot pan of oil. Although inexpensive, this cut was not to be underestimated. The meat was carefully placed into the hot oil, despite being slightly chewy. It had an incredibly rich flavor. After adding the meat, Yuung Wu quickly turned up the flame. As the aroma of the sizzling meat began to fill the room, it made him smile. Stir-frying would certainly enhance the dish further. At that moment, Nabi peeked through the doorway, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she watched him. Yuung Wu chuckled and called out, "Don't just hide there, come in. I'll teach you." As the meat started to brown, he quickly added kimchi to the pan, followed by the shoulder meat, mixing it all together. He then grabbed a spoonful of bean paste and added it to the pan, patiently explaining to the wide-eyed Nabi beside him. Adding soybean paste helps reduce the strong pork smell, he said. Yuung Wu carefully explained the You can also use cooking wine, but some people skip this step. Moreover, kimchi already contains a lot of garlic, so it can serve as a substitute. Nabi nodded in understanding, her hands clasped in approval. She looked up and asked, "So adding soybean paste makes it edible for people sensitive to alcohol? Like in some religions where wine isn't allowed?" Garlic in kimchi is often the go-to substitute. Yuung Wu smiled and added some pre-chopped seasoning and other flavor enhancers into the mix. Once everything was ready, he glanced at the now diligent Nabi. "That's it, it's done." Her eyes lit up as she jotted down notes, underlining and marking key steps. Excitedly, she jumped up with the recipe in her notebook. "I can make kimchi stew now. I'll try it next time." The dish was quickly brought out and placed before Park Sung-hyun, who looked at the meal in bewilderment. After a moment, he shyly glanced up and asked, "It seems like I'm not the only one craving this dish. You're too, aren't you?" Yuung Wu wiped his hands and smiled. "Strange, isn't it? Back on Earth, I didn't think much about it. But since coming to this world, I've craved it constantly." "I understand." The metal spoon dipped into the glistening stew, and Park Sung-hyun took a full spoonful into his mouth. His eyes welled up with tears. Yes, this is it. From deep within his subconscious, a memory surfaced. A simple yet aromatic family meal. As he chewed, tears streamed uncontrollably down his face, his shoulders trembling. "This taste, it's home," he choked out. Tears flowed freely as he whispered, "I'm back." After finishing the meal, Park Sung-hyun quietly recounted, "I've been on TERRA for 13 years. Nabi tidied the dishes nearby. 13 years, she murmured. Park Sung-hyun lowered his head in exhaustion. 6 years have passed here. Yuung Wu reflected on his own experience and sighed. I spent 40 years there, but only 9 years have passed here. There really are no rules to this. After calming himself, Park Sung-hyun raised his head and said, I'm a level 5 hunter. Yuung Wu looked at him and quickly recognized. A veteran, huh? Are you a silver-ranked adventurer? Exactly. Park Sung-hyun replied, standing up from his seat. He walked to the window and said, This place is different from TERRA. The system here for handling monster gates is flawless. As he spoke, his voice grew quieter, and his expression more solemn. It makes me miss TERRA even more. Yuung Wu looked at him in surprise. Wait, you mean, you didn't come back because you wanted to? Park Sung-hyun turned and smiled bitterly, while exploring an underground dungeon. I was struck by a banishment spell. Yuung Wu's eyes widened. So you didn't return voluntarily? You were expelled by a spell? He thought back to the banishment magic he'd heard of before. Spatial banishment magic forcibly ejects its target from a space. After a moment of contemplation, he said, in terms of spatial dimensions, Earthlings are likely expelled back to Earth. Yuung Wu placed his hands on his hips and smiled. Well, that's incredibly lucky. But it wasn't like that for me. Park Sung-hyun lowered his head in silence. Lost in thought, Yuung Wu observed his expression and quickly understood. So that's it, that's where your home is. Sung-hyun. Park Sung-hyun stared at the door and sighed. I have a wife and even Iripo's waiting for me there. Closing his eyes, he reminisced. 13 years, it's a number long enough to change a homeland. In his fragmented memories, he saw a woman, Baek Hang-hyuk, and a white Iripo's waving goodbye. Suddenly overcome with emotion, he slumped to the ground, sobbing. Hyuk. Nabi approached and tried to console him with a cloth, though her panic was evident. Yuung Wu, watching the scene, turned his head in slight disdain. Then, extending his hand, he asked, Do you want me to send you back? Park Sung-hyun raised his head, startled. Yuung Wu patiently repeated, I'm asking, do you want me to send you back to TERRA? Is that possible? I'd want nothing more than to return. Park Sung-hyun stammered, his voice filled with disbelief. Yuung Wu smiled and snapped his fingers. All right. Then, a large, glowing vortex instantly appeared at Park Sung-hyun's feet. Park Sung-hyun stared at it in shock, utterly bewildered. What's happening? On the other side. Yuung Wu remained calm and offered a simple farewell. It was nice meeting you. As soon as the sentence ended, the glowing vortex pulled Park Sung-hyun through. And his screams echoed as he fell from a great height. The portal closed, but his cries still lingered faintly. Yuung Wu glanced at the now quiet portal and brushed off his hands. I really hate seeing people cry. He muttered, but hey, it worked out. If someone shifts between dimensions automatically, then the goddess. He turned away mid-thought. He wanted to go back. So I sent him. If the goddess shows up, I'll deal with her. Their problems aren't my concern. He walked off but paused to call back. Anyway, good work, Nabi. Now shut the door. Alright, got it, Nabi replied, closing the door. She brought over a pot of kimchi porridge and suggested. This failure of mine, I'll give it to the slime pudding in the basement. Yuung Wu stepped forward, took the pot, and smiled. No way, I'll eat this, master. No, don't, Nabi protested, horrified. Yuung Wu chuckled. It's fine, deep in his memories. He recalled the days he spent imprisoned. He saw himself slumped in exhaustion in the depths of a prison cell. A pair of dark hands lightly tapped on the bars. And a voice called out. A man smiled at him. Did you know today marks your 200th day in the arena? Yuung Wu scowled and raised his head. John, why would I care about that? John smiled helplessly and said nothing, instead pushing a pot and spoon through the bars. A gift. Kimchi stew, right? Yuung Wu smiled faintly. Where did you get this? John rested his hands on his hips and laughed heartily. In this world, people treat kimchi as a necessity. I bought it with a coin. When I told them I wanted to make stew with it. This is what they gave me. Yuung Wu burst out laughing in response. Kimchi, a necessity? No way, it's a masterpiece. He eagerly opened the pot in front of him, his anticipation high. But his smile faltered as he stared inside. John, this isn't kimchi stew. What is it, then? Looking at the contents of the pot, Yuung Wu realized. This is kimchi porridge. John's face twisted in dismay. I was tricked? Still, Yuung Wu smiled up at him. Thanks anyway, I wanted to try this. 2. John laughed heartily, extending a hand. Then it's your lucky day. Eat plenty and make sure you survive for the next round. As John walked away, Yuung Wu devoured the porridge in a rush. Back in the present, faced with Nabi's dish, Yuung Wu sighed. I thought you'd added green onions. But it was onions all along. Now I know. He ate quietly, savoring the porridge in the stillness of the room. Glancing toward the nearby door, Yuung Wu thought, I'm pretty lucky, aren't I? He recalled his past, mercilessly slaughtering in the arena. Throwing people from this world into the pit for sport, and the screams of enraged nobles battling for their lives. But then, John's smiling face appeared in his mind. A stark contrast, a symbol of the gentleness of kind-hearted people like him. The bowl of kimchi porridge was soon emptied. Yuung Wu sat quietly, staring at the empty bowl. If John hadn't appeared back then, a thought struck him. I would have become a monster who only knew how to kill. Not a warrior. Shrugging off the heavy reflection, he looked at the now empty bowl and muttered. Delicious, even if it'll give me a stomachache. In the bustling wholesale market, crowds of people bustled about, and laughter and chatter filled the air. The market offered everything imaginable, attracting visitors of all ages who eagerly browsed and picked through the goods. Yoo Seungwoo walked leisurely, eating while Arupo's Nabi trotted alongside him, looking around. He commented, this place hasn't changed much, though a few spots look like they've been rebuilt. He turned to Nabi with a smile. Do you want to eat anything else? With excitement, Nabi replied. Let's finish this hot dog first. Then we can think about it. Suddenly, something caught Yoo Seungwoo's eye. A neatly arranged display of spice boxes on a shelf, an essential feature of traditional markets. Nearby, stacks of food containers were piled in a cozy corner, evoking the charm of being surrounded by so many foods for sale. He remarked, shopping at markets is much more fun than supermarkets. So, what do you want to buy? Nabi darted ahead enthusiastically. Let's go treasure hunting, at a vendor's stall. Both of them stood with their hands on their chins, looking thoughtful as if pondering what to pick. After a while, Yoo Seungwoo turned away, shrugging, nothing here really catches my eye. But Nabi suddenly froze, sensing something, and turned to look. Without a word, she darted off, leaving Yoo Seungwoo standing there, bewildered. Nabi pointed to a massive object in front of her. What about this? Yoo Seungwoo ran over, touching the enormous item. A clam? This is the biggest one I've ever seen. But then he hesitated. Realization dawning. Wait a second. It looks familiar. His eyes widened as he shouted, "No way! Is this a Harajigas?" Harajigas clams were known to be used by the Giantes people for entertainment. Curious, Yoo Seungwoo turned to the shopkeeper. "Excuse me, can you tell me about this clam?" The shopkeeper waved her hand dismissively. "I'm not sure, my husband picked it up somewhere and brought it home." Shocked, Yoo Seungwoo asked. "Picked it up? This thing must weigh over 200 kilograms. The shopkeeper burst into laughter. "My husband's considered a strongman among hunters. You know," running his hand over the clam's shell. Yoo Seungwoo felt its timeless majesty. "It's definitely a Harajigas," he murmured, smiling. He made his decision. "I'll buy this clam." The shopkeeper placed her hand on the clam and said seriously, "Young man, no matter what you do, you won't be able to open this. It's purely for decoration." Unfazed, Yoo Seungwoo gestured toward a pile of mackerel beside the clam. "No problem. I'll take 10 mackerel and this clam." Surprised, the shopkeeper asked, 10? That's quite a lot." Scratching his head awkwardly, he replied, "I run a small restaurant, so I'll need them." The shopkeeper's expression turned incredulous as she pointed a finger at him. "Are you crazy? Only 10? That's not nearly enough for a restaurant." She enthusiastically started selecting more fish for him. "Take these as well, and these." Nabi clapped in delight as the shopkeeper piled up their haul. Finally, with the massive Harajigas clams slung over his shoulder, Yoo Seungwoo said his goodbyes. "Thanks, I'll come again next time." The shopkeeper laughed. "You look even stronger than my husband." Back home, the two stood frozen, staring at the enormous clam, unsure of what to do. Yoo Seungwoo rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "It's definitely an impressive ingredient. But how should we handle it?" He slapped the clam's shell and suggested. "First, let's try opening it, shall we?" Nabi nodded enthusiastically. "Great idea," grabbing the clam with both hands. Yoo Seungwoo tried to pry it open. The residue from the sea made it difficult to budge, but still. He pressed on, furrowing his brows and using all his strength. Suddenly, the clam's mouth sprang open wide. Both of them stood there. Jaws dropped and eyes wide in astonishment. "Oh my gosh!" they exclaimed in unison. The shimmering, glowing pearl inside the clam's shell caught his attention. The scallop was even larger than Nabi, who nodded in agreement. He grabbed a prepared knife from the side. "If it's a scallop, we had to make sashimi." He carefully sliced a thin piece and dipped it into a small ceramic bowl filled with soy sauce. He smiled in satisfaction, feeling a sudden craving for soju. With all this meat and these organs, let's try making clam chowder, he mused. Clam chowder is a North American-style clam soup, delicate and smooth, a masterpiece. He nodded approvingly. "For dinner, we'll have scallop sashimi with wine, and tomorrow morning, we'll cure the hangover with clam chowder." "Perfect." His eyes darkened with a mischievous gleam as he emphasized the last 8 words. "A nutritious meal for hunters." He pointed to a dark, brownish mass with his knife. "This is the poison sac." The poison sac contained an extremely dangerous toxin. Eating it would result in death. But if one survived, they would gain resistance to poison. Just looking at it, the effectiveness was evident. Watching him speak and laugh to himself, Nabi helplessly thought, "Master really is terrifying." He chuckled wickedly. "So those pathetic guys can eat it every day. I'll prepare it in a way that it can be preserved." Superstar Hanghyuk shivered involuntarily. The killing intent was palpable. He readied his elbow, a determined glint in his eye. "Let's get started. Shall we?" Suddenly, the door creaked open. Min entered from outside. "Good morning, master." The two greeted him with a smile. "Good morning." As Yoo Seungwoo pulled up a chair, he remarked, "It's early, and you're already working." "Seems interesting," Min happily replied, "just preparing this clam." Min then asked, "Is this the clam that was found in the river? Is it edible?" Yoo Seungwoo paused, turning to look at Min. He stood up quickly and asked, "A river? Harajigas can be found in a river?" Min casually answered, "Of course." Yoo Seungwoo set the knife down. His interest piqued. "That's interesting, tell me more." Min began to explain. "About 2 days ago, we received a report from the locals about a loud noise coming from the drainage pipes. The hunters were called to the site. They discovered a very small tear in the fabric of space." Yoo Seungwoo began to sense the gravity of the situation. If that's the case, he fell silent, deep in thought. If this continued, there was a possibility that a portal could open in that area soon. His face grew serious as he pondered the implications of this discovery. Nabi carefully carried the plate out at this moment. She cheerfully placed it on the table and reminded everyone, "Here's the scallop salad." Yuung Wu glanced at Min O'Keefe, who was holding her chopsticks, and asked, Before the gate opened, there was another crack, like an ominous sign. Near the drainage pipe, wasn't there? That's right, she replied, tapping her chopsticks on the table and looking up. Because the situation might change at any moment, a special response team has already been dispatched there. He let out a relieved sigh. No wonder I haven't seen Baek Hang-hyuk around lately. Min O'Keefe picked up some salad with her chopsticks and looked surprised. Wow, the teacher's skills are amazing. He sliced it so thinly you can practically see through it. He turned around with a cheerful grin. That's how it gets that perfect texture. Do you want vinegar or soy sauce with wasabi? I'll have soy sauce without wasabi, she replied. He quickly grabbed the bottle of soy sauce. Yoo Woo's expression grew darker as he looked at the cracks. He recalled how Park Sun-yeon had mentioned before that some people had defied the principles of time and space and returned to Earth in inexplicable ways. And then there was Nabi's discovery of scallops and the harajigas found in the river. Deep in Yoo Woo's memory was the image of a large figure. The race that typically consumed these scallops was the Galantes. A proud and extremely violent species with strength surpassing level 90. The cracks were certainly related to them. His hands froze while holding the bottle of soy sauce. This was too strange to be dismissed as mere coincidence. Suspicious thoughts clouded his mind. What if this isn't just a coincidence? His entire body froze with unease, a sense of guilt creeping over him. In an underground sewer pipe, Baek Hang-hyuk frowned in annoyance. This is unbearable. The manager beside him, also looking displeased, snapped, then just quit already. Is it really impossible to change this situation? The manager glared at him and added. If you can't even write your resignation letter because you're lying in a sleeping bag whining like a bug, I can write it for you anytime. Got it? She turned to him with a harsh look. I've tried for a whole month to respect you. But this is just too much. Baek Hang-hyuk choked up, crying in frustration. This is too much. Why did I give up my day off to sit in a sewer like this? This doesn't feel like first order at all. The manager sighed in exasperation. Then what do you think first order should be doing? He perked up immediately at her words, his eyes lighting up, with a cheerful snap of his fingers. Baek Hang-hyuk declared. Something grand, of course. Fighting monsters while live streaming. She turned away, distancing herself. You might as well quit this job and join a game show instead. His enthusiasm instantly deflated, and he stood there awkwardly. Defeated, he muttered, fine. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore. Like a sulking child, he trudged away, mumbling, whatever, I'm done. The manager turned back, her expression serious. In front of her was a gate with a blue crack running through it. Her eyes reflected her weariness. Baek Hang-hyuk wasn't entirely wrong. How much longer do we have to stay here waiting? She glanced at him as he pouted. Still, as members of the military, this is part of the job, guard duty. Even here, leaning down, she reminded him, hey, go upstairs and call the next team down for their shift. Suddenly, a tremor shook the ground, startling her. The manager spun around, alarmed. The crack behind them had widened significantly. Critical situation was unfolding. Armed military forces quickly arrived on the scene. Baek Hang-hyuk crawled out of his sleeping bag, scowling as he grabbed his weapon. Damn it, she turned to assess the situation, focusing on the gate's level. The monitor flashed red, then shattered amid the continuous vibrations. She froze, momentarily stunned, the monitor's broken. The manager collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed, S-rank. Or worse, clutching her face. She trembled uncontrollably, stammering, I can't determine anything. As the gate expanded wider and wider before them, a sense of helplessness loomed. Are we, this city, just going to disappear without a trace? The soldiers stared anxiously at the growing threat. A gloved hand gently rested on her knee, offering reassurance. Baek Hang-hyuk strode forward confidently, exuding a commanding aura, before it grows any larger. Someone has to go inside, he repeated cheerfully. Emergency guidelines for crack incidents, G3 protocol. Both of their eyes lit up as they shouted in unison. Deploy the rift stabilizer to stop its expansion and hold on until reinforcements arrive. Baek Hang-hyuk's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Now we need to temporarily stop it. The manager stood up, blocking him and reminding him. The entire attack squad would be more effective. He waved her off dismissively. Min isn't here. Without Min, everyone would just get in my way. Placing both hands firmly on her shoulders, he looked at her, leaving her bewildered. His tone was firm. I'll take the stabilizer and go in to adjust the rift. But his serious face was reflected in her wide, confused eyes. Listen carefully, Baek Hang-hyuk impatiently continued. At the outskirts near Changyongging Road, there's a hunter's diner. Go there. Explain the situation to the owner, and bring that person here as fast as you can. Though puzzled, she nodded, understood. He patted her on the shoulder. considering his next words carefully. Mention my name and beg them to come help. If you want to survive, that's the only way. Seeing her hesitation, he shouted. Hurry up, that's an order. The manager immediately stood at attention. Got it. As soon as she left, Baek Hang-hyuk rummaged through his bag. His trembling hands reached for a cigarette in his pocket. Just as he brought it near his lips, it fell to the ground. Damn it, a soldier approached him, looking impressed. Baek Hang-hyuk, you're pretty cool today. He grinned playfully. Are you guys recording this? The group hesitated awkwardly but didn't deny it. Well, yeah? Unamused, he leaned to light the cigarette and said. Just focus on catching anything that comes out of there. I'm heading in. With that, he grabbed the stabilizer and plunged into the rift. I'm going. His small figure disappeared into the other side. The soldiers outside fired continuously, loading golden rounds into their weapons. Fire. Reinforce the nets. If we get pushed back, it's over. A red monster with ferocious eyes and its underlings surged out of the rift. Charging forward, the military fell into chaos. It won't stop. Reload, reload. Suddenly, everything grew quiet. Baek Hang-hyuk looked up, seeing a massive black figure rushing toward him. The crimson beast towering over 10 meters locked its gaze on him. Its razor-sharp claws sliced through the air at incredible speed. Terrified, he shut his eyes, bracing himself. Mom, at that moment, a sword-wielding figure charged in from behind. It was Yuung Wu, radiating fury, cutting down the beast in one clean stroke. As his booted foot touched the ground with a thud, he stood silently, facing the hovering bats above. Yuung Wu calmly sheathed his sword. Unfazed, behind him, blood splattered violently, painting the walls. The soldiers stood in stunned silence, lowering their weapons in disbelief. Without a word, Yuung Wu picked up his sword again, shielding himself from the blood splatter with an air of quiet composure. The corpses of the monsters lay scattered across the ground, completely defeated. The soldiers were baffled. What's happening here? Yuung Wu stood before the faintly glowing gate. Then, with a swift gust of wind, he disappeared into it. The soldiers quickly shielded themselves from the powerful winds. Looking around at the silence, the group began to chatter. Was there someone here a moment ago? Confirm that the monsters have been eliminated. Check the recordings to ensure none escaped. Call the military medic. Meanwhile, Baek Hang-hyuk crouched, trembling in terror as he peeked out from his hiding spot. Terrified, he clutched his head. The energy barrier's been completely activated. He felt like a grain of sand amidst towering pillars, wailing internally. Am I going to die here? The Giantes glared at the barrier in front of them with rage. They exchanged frustrated glances. Why can't we go any further? No idea, just hit it harder. One of them raised its fist in fury, striking the barrier with immense force. The shield shattered, sending fragments flying everywhere. Baek Hang-hyuk, hiding behind a pillar, peeped out in shock. They're breaking the energy barrier with their bare hands? The other Giantes followed suit, pounding relentlessly on the barrier in front of them. He crouched down, trembling and terrified. Hurry up, you damn regressor, get here already. One of the Giantes slammed its fist into the barrier, sending a massive fragment hurtling toward Baek Hang-hyuk's hiding spot. He looked up in panic, eyes wide with fear. What? Quickly. His small body dodged, narrowly avoiding the projectile. He screamed loudly in fright. The Giantes stopped and turned their heads, drawn to the noise. What was that sound? Horrified, Baek Hang-hyuk curled up tightly, covering his mouth to stifle his breathing, trying desperately not to make a sound. Baek Hang-hyuk carefully lifted his gaze to observe. A Giantes had spotted him, its glowing red eyes locked onto him. Sweat poured down his face as he gave a terrified, forced smile. The Giantes muttered among themselves while staring at him. Looks like this one set up the barrier. Crush him, that'll be more satisfying. Immediately, Baek Hang-hyuk regained his composure and burst out angrily. Damn it, he pulled out his gun and quickly fired. You think he'll die that easily? The bullets flew like grains of sand, but they were effortlessly deflected. The Giantes didn't even flinch, raising a massive leg to finish him off. Realizing his bullets had no effect and were even ricocheting back, Baek Hang-hyuk froze in despair, bracing for the worst. Just then, Yuung Wu appeared on the other side of the barrier, watching the scene unfold. Seeing him, Baek Hang-hyuk exhaled deeply and slumped back. He's here. Yuung Wu jumped down gracefully. Sword in hand, his other hand gripped the hilt. Ready, drawing the blade with a calm, satisfied expression, he strode forward. Behind him, a blinding light cast his figure into a hazy silhouette. The Giantes shouted in shock. What is that? Move away. Yoo Wu walked past them with ease, delivering casual but precise strikes. A faint whirlwind surrounded him as he moved. One by one, the giantes collapsed to the ground. Baek Hang Hyuk watched the scene unfold. His small eyes wide with awe. He's not even a monster. Recalling the time he had foolishly punched Yoo Wu, he shuddered. I actually hit that guy? Yoo Wu glanced back at him with a neutral expression. Suddenly, a stone flew out of nowhere, hurtling toward Baek Hang Hyuk. Completely caught off guard, he took the hit head-on. A large lump forming on his head as he crumpled to the ground. Yoo Wu approached him, crouching beside his dazed form. This guy was hiding the whole time. What was he even looking around for? Yoo Wu sighed as he surveyed the scene. I wasn't even planning to kill the giantes. Before him lay the bodies of the fallen giantes scattered across the ground. Were they really planning to conquer the entire planet? He grabbed a bag and calmly started collecting resources and artifacts. Muttering to himself, let's store these in the warehouse first. With a slight smirk, he hoisted Baek Hang Hyuk over his shoulder. And this kid too. Approaching the barrier, Yoo Wu unceremoniously tossed Baek Hang Hyuk through it. If I threw him gently, the hunters would notice and just take him back anyway. His expression finally softened, and he puffed out his chest with relief. That's done and dusted. Meanwhile, at his diner, the air was pierced by a loud, pained cry from Nabi. Master, help me. The customers looked on cheerfully. Amused by the scene, your arrow pose is so adorable. Look this way, can I touch its front paw? Yoo Wu entered the diner, surprised and confused by the commotion. Nabi reached out toward him, crying pitifully. Didn't I tell you? Can't you hear me? This is what happens when you leave me alone. Yoo Wu stepped forward apologetically. Sorry, dear customers, this arrow pose is actually one of our staff members. At that moment, a woman approached in a flurry of concern. You're the owner of this diner, correct? Yes, that's me, he replied. She introduced herself politely. I'm Wang Ji-yun, an assistant with First Order. Don't worry, I'm just here to ask for urgent help. Yoo Wu hesitated for a moment, his thoughts uneasy. I just got back from the sewer. Though, it turned out that Baek Hang Hyuk, through Wang Ji-yun, was requesting Yoo Wu's assistance. But Yoo Wu, sensing something strange, suddenly bolted out of the diner without warning. He backed away, pushing a chair aside. Well then, looking at Wang Ji-yun, who stood before him. Teary-eyed and dejected, he sighed. Alright, let's talk. 2 steaming cups of coffee were placed on the table. Yoo Seungwoo sat down next to Wang Ji-yun and asked. So, to sum it up, he gestured to the side. Baek Hang Hyuk charged into the space rift and is now asking for my help. Huh? Wang Ji-yun looked at him anxiously. Pleading, this is an emergency, only someone of S rank can go through the gate. Seeing her worried expression, Yoo Seungwoo covered his mouth and chuckled softly. That's true. Wang Ji-yun, confused by his reaction, stared at him with suspicion. He took a sip of his coffee and mused. Not bad, Baek Hang Hyuk, I've got to say, I admire him. Still puzzled, Wang Ji-yun tilted her head. Huh? Yoo Seungwoo laughed out loud. It's nothing. Don't worry, there'll be good news soon. Just relax and breathe, he thought to himself. It seems like the branch office hasn't contacted her yet. He glanced toward the other side of the diner, where Nabi was surrounded by a group of customers poking and prodding the helpless cat. Mumbling to himself, he said, if we're talking about emergencies, that over there looks more urgent. A man with a stern face was stroking Nabi's tail. Laughing gleefully, so cute, the tail is so round and soft. Nabi flailed its paws at him in frustration. Hissing, meow, I said, don't touch my tail. Irritated by the scene, Yoo Seungwoo frowned. Do they think this is a cat cafe? They're not even ordering food. What kind of customers are these? He walked over and pushed the group out of the diner. Get out. The group protested, annoyed. What's with this guy? How rude. Ignoring their complaints, he slammed the door shut and sighed deeply. Turning back to Wang Ji-yun, he asked, so, you're a hunter? She nodded seriously. Yes, although I work in an office, I'm an awakened individual. He smirked mischievously. A hunter, huh? That's great. Noticing his expression, Wang Ji-yun felt a bit uneasy. What do you mean by that? She glanced at him as he petted Nabi gently. Take a rest, he said to the cat, then addressed her curiosity. At a diner, you should eat something, right? She waved her hand, declining. No, I can't sit down to eat given the current situation. He tied on an apron with a chuckle. But I've already said everything I needed to, haven't I? Placing a hand on his chest. Yoo Seungwoo felt a pang of frustration. Why haven't we had more hunters as customers lately? Despite offering meals with energy-boosting effects, it didn't seem to draw much interest. Looking at a delicious plate of steak, he muttered, the problem must be the flavor. It's not good enough to make a noticeable impact. Pondering, he thought, still, the recovery dishes we serve have some potential. They're perfect for attracting modern hunters. Exhausted and overworked, his face lit up with determination. First, we need a bait product. He slammed the table, startling Wang Jihun. She flinched as he turned to her with a smile. You've been feeling cold symptoms lately, haven't you? Sometimes a chill runs down your spine, right? Surprised, Wang Jihun stammered, how did you know? I've been pulling all-nighters and sleeping in sewers recently. So, Yoo Seungwoo examined her like a curious animal in a zoo. It seems like you've caught a chill. Overthinking and overworking have made your neck and shoulders cold as well. Suspicion filled Wang Jihun's mind. Can I ask, is this a diner? Or is it a pharmacy? Heading into the kitchen, Yoo Seungwoo didn't forget to call back to her. I have a menu item for treating chills. Just wait a moment, watching him with skepticism. She mumbled, selling medicine now, huh? In the kitchen, he tapped on the shell of a giant clam. These are the ingredients I harvested earlier from those giant monsters. Outside the kitchen, Wang Jihun nervously bit her nails. Why does he seem so unbothered after listening to me? If Baekhang Hyuk asked for his help, he must be incredibly strong. She glanced at her phone. Still no contact from the branch office, which likely meant the spatial gate had already been handled by someone. Her gaze turned serious as she looked toward the kitchen. Seeing Yoo Seungwoo busying himself with the giant clam, she thought, it must be him. Scratching her head nervously, she recalled the guidelines she had been given. Basic rules for dealing with regressors. Rule 1. Be as cautious as if you were handling a bomb. Treat them with the respect you'd show another human being. Yoo Seungwoo turned toward her with a cheerful smile. So, have you made up your mind now? She nodded awkwardly, forcing a smile, but internally she was screaming. Eating and drinking must be part of the guidelines too, right? Yoo Seungwoo began his cooking. He poured garlic into a pan. Next, he added olive oil. Stirring it thoroughly, he then picked up a bowl of clam meat. It smells amazing. Wang Jihun murmured, are you cooking clam meat? He smiled and explained, yes. This is clam meat soup, Harajuku's meat soup. She tilted her head, curious. But why is the clam meat so big? He chuckled, it's called Harajuku's, have you seen one before? She blinked in surprise, I'm a city girl, I don't know much about seafood. Her eyes drifted toward the massive clam shell in the kitchen. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Wait, isn't that a clam monster? Slamming the table, she panicked, this crazy guy is feeding me monster meat? Noticing her reaction, he frowned in confusion, is something wrong? Terrified, she quickly replied, no, nothing, I'm just not hungry anymore. Holding her head in despair, she thought, dealing with a regressor is like handling a bomb. If I refuse, her mind conjured a catastrophic image. The city exploding into ruins. Shaking her head, she waved her hands frantically. No, no, it's fine. Cooking clam soup. Step 1. Sauté garlic, potatoes, and bacon. Step 2. Add flour, then stir in potatoes and clam meat. Pour in milk and broth. The milk, harvested from minotaurs, is lower in sugar but richer in vitamins and fats than ordinary milk. Step 3. After adding the milk, mix in a layer of magical essence. Followed by various magical enhancements. Stir continuously to prevent burning. After finishing the cooking, Yoo Seungwoo tasted his creation. He smiled, all right. A steaming bowl of soup was brought out, filled with clam meat, warm broth, and restorative energy. He smiled at Wang Jihun. Take your time and enjoy. Still overwhelmed, she muttered, you finished so quickly. He crossed his arms and smiled. It only seems like that because it's made from a giant clam. It's actually just clam meat and milk porridge. Yoo Seungwoo offered, should I sprinkle some cilantro on top? Wang Jihun immediately shook her head. No, thanks, who knows if that's some kind of monster skin or something. She stared at the steaming bowl of porridge. Deep in thought, resolving herself, she closed her eyes and took a spoonful. Her cautious reaction made Yoo Seungwoo raise an eyebrow in curiosity. As she swallowed the first spoonful, she marveled, so warm. She imagined herself stranded in an icy desert, freezing in the middle of a winter night. Then, out of nowhere, a house appeared, and she felt the warmth of a fireplace inside. She kept eating eagerly, sweat pouring down her face, peeling off her jacket. She continued to eat, despite the heat making her wave her hands to cool herself. Watching her, Yoo Seungwoo chuckled, feeling hot, fanning herself. She replied, yeah, really hot, smiling at him. Wang Ji-yun admitted, this is my first time trying monster meat, but it's actually pretty good. At the Korean branch of the Hunter Association, in a meeting room, a hearing regarding an S-rank establishment was underway. A middle-aged man sat with his fingers interlocked, surrounded by walls adorned with photos of past generations. A secretary took notes on the proceedings while a young man stood upright. Looking directly at the middle-aged man, Baek Hang-hyuk spoke up with a displeased expression. I understand what you're trying to say, and I was about to say the same thing. The middle-aged man, Lee Young-hun, the branch chief of the Korean Hunter Association, looked at him, then, about this mysterious individual with an unclear background. Baek Hang-hyuk interrupted, branch chief. It's not a mysterious individual with an unclear background. He's the owner of a hunter restaurant. Lee Young-hun pressed on, and this restaurant owner, within just 5 minutes, managed to eliminate dozens of monsters presumed to be S-rank? Baek Hang-hyuk cut him off again. Branch chief. Allow me to clarify, it's not just presumed to be S-rank but confirmed as S-rank or higher. Internally, he screamed, that detector exploded, didn't it? How many times do I have to explain this? Lee Young-hun, his shiny bald head gleaming with irritation, scowled. This kid, are you mocking me? Adjusting his tie and sighing deeply, he continued, let me ask again. Regressor number 21, the owner of the Hero's Diner, eliminated dozens of S-rank monsters. Is that true? Baek Hang-hyuk casually covered his mouth as he let out a long yawn. I already said I saw it with my own eyes, but if you're still doubtful, you can just credit me with capturing them instead. Lee Young-hun rubbed his temples in frustration. Do you realize this isn't normal? Baek Hang-hyuk shrugged. No, I don't. The branch chief slammed the table in anger. All individuals with immeasurable power are supposed to be in the city center. Yet this happens here. Does that sound normal to you? Turning his face away, Baek Hang-hyuk feigned ignorance. Then, facing Lee Young-hun with a sly grin, he said, but, branch chief, think about it. Isn't it possible there are still people with immeasurable power who haven't been discovered yet? He continued, when they first arrived on Earth, didn't they register as regressors? The branch chief hesitated. Yes, that's right, and if some people don't want to register with the association as regressors, isn't it normal that we wouldn't encounter them? Lee Young-hun nodded, his suspicion growing. That does make sense. Baek Hang-hyuk smirked smugly. Exactly, so what's the problem if someone with that kind of power runs a restaurant? As long as they don't do anything wrong, it's fine, right? He slammed the table and flashed a cunning smile. So this regressor is just that kind of person, end of story. Lee Young-hun raised an eyebrow. End of story? Rubbing his chin, Baek Hang-hyuk replied, no one needs to feel awkward about this. A decent person would never even consider hiding anything. Leaning on the table, Baek Hang-hyuk swayed back and forth casually. People like that aren't enemies of the country. Don't overthink it. Lee Young-hun frowned in frustration. Not everything in this world can be divided into enemies and allies. He continued, let's assume we encounter a problem. I can't fully trust people like that just because they appear kind-hearted. This concerns the safety and lives of our citizens. Baek Hang-hyuk smirked, who's saying otherwise? Anyway, those who are of higher rank than you, or at least on the same level, will make their own judgments. He waved his hand dismissively and turned to the secretary. Either way, this is a conclusion reached by the current key personnel. Since it's an important matter, underline it, please. Ms. Secretary, Lee Young-hun wiped the sweat from his forehead, his frustration mounting. This damn brat. Don't think they'll let this go just because of your smooth talk. He grew more anxious, imagining the nation's destruction. Like those other countries, they got involved with the wrong regressor. We shouldn't provoke him, but if we don't handle this carefully, I can't let him blow this country to bits. Time passed before Lee Young-hun finally spoke. There's no other choice. I'll report this matter to the higher-ups. Baek Hang-hyuk lazily picked at his ear. Sure, go ahead and report it. Can I leave now? I've got something urgent to take care of. Lee Young-hun nodded. Something urgent? Go on. Then, you should be investigating, patrolling, and looking out for the citizens. Baek Hang-hyuk blew on his finger after cleaning his ear and glanced at him as if he were an idiot. Branch chief, you're not very sharp, are you? I need to go buy land. What? Lee Young-hun asked, confused. Baek Hang-hyuk leaned in and whispered in his ear. The strongest regressor in history is running that restaurant, right? If we live near him, even if Earth is destroyed, we'd still survive. Don't you think the land prices around there are going to skyrocket soon? Lee Young-hun's face went blank as he forced a smile and began gathering his documents. Right, why didn't I think of that? Then, smacking Baek Hang-hyuk on the head with the stack of papers. He snapped, you really think I'd say that? The citizens are in danger. And you're talking about land? Clutching the lump on his head. Baek Hang-hyuk grumbled, we need to keep the citizens safe. But I have to secure my wallet first. Lee Young-hun roared in exasperation. Shut your mouth, you're driving me insane. Outside the restaurant, a group of soldiers was chatting. He saved Hunter Baek Hang-hyuk. Doesn't that sound a bit odd? One of them turned to Min Ok-heef and asked, Captain, is this really a restaurant run by a regressor? It looks so ordinary. Min Ok-heef replied seriously, I've warned you several times already. Don't do anything disrespectful here. The soldier who asked seemed annoyed. Hey, we're just regular folks, why would we ever do something rude? The others quickly chimed in, that's right, of course. Min Ok-heef opened the door and invited everyone inside. Yoo Seungwoo stood behind the counter, smiling warmly at them. Welcome, please come in. Two of them exchanged glances. I brought them here, sir. One said, well done. Yoo Seungwoo replied. Min Ok-heef cleared his throat awkwardly. Thanks to you, I feel much better, thank you. Yoo Seungwoo laughed heartily. Oh, thank you, no need to be so formal. Everyone seated themselves at the tables, and Min Ok-heef spoke up again. We can't do much to help you, sir. So at the very least, we thought we'd help boost your restaurant's sales. The others exchanged skeptical looks, whispering among themselves. I thought he'd look really unusual, why does he seem so warm and approachable? Yeah, I thought he'd be cold and intimidating. Like an assassin or something. But looking closer, he's just a regular restaurant owner. Well, maybe not just a regular owner. He's kind of handsome. Kind of, no, he's definitely handsome. All eyes turned toward Yoo Seungwoo, who was fully focused on cooking. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in surprise. Wait, is that an air pose over there? Excitement lit up the room as they spotted Nabi, by then. Yoo Seungwoo had finished cooking and was drying his freshly washed hands. Nabi was busily serving dishes to the tables. The steaming dishes were set down. And everyone eagerly dug in, smiling. They said, thank you, we'll enjoy the meal. The moment they took their first bite, everyone froze in shock. One soldier's eyes lit up. Delicious, it's so good. Another was moved to tears, shoveling spoonful after spoonful into his mouth. Someone turned to Min Ok-heef, his voice trembling. Captain, if we eat food this good every day, we could wipe out all the monsters out there. Seeing their exaggerated enthusiasm, Min Ok-heef looked skeptical. Really? The soldier wiped his tears, overwhelmed. This isn't just food, it's a masterpiece, there's no other word for it. Min Ok-heef sighed, his expression unreadable as he observed the others' reactions. After some time, everyone had finished their meals. Watching them, Yoo Seungwoo smiled to himself. Thinking, great, 5 new advertising agents acquired. He imagined the soldiers returning to their base and spreading the word about his restaurant. Soon, droves of people would come flocking in. Drawn by the buzz, a mischievous grin spread across his face. But first, I need to slowly get rid of their hesitation about eating monster ingredients. He smirked darkly to himself. If they ever realize what they're eating, I'll just make sure their bodies can't resist craving food like this. Suddenly, a loud scream erupted from outside the restaurant. In the heart of the city, under the blazing sun, Yoo Seungwoo strolled through the bustling streets. He tilted his head back to look at the sky. It was cold just a while ago. Why is it so hot now? He noticed the curious stares from passers-by. I know, I'm feeling hot too. Glancing at his phone, he muttered. So this is why people check the weather forecast. He turned toward a nearby shop. An old-fashioned ice cream parlor, peering into the display case. He picked out an ice cream bar and unwrapped it. Taking a bite, he mused. 40 years ago, no, wait. 9 years ago, the seasons were still so distinct. Now the weather changes drastically in less than a month. Looking at the ice cream in his hand, he noted. Pretty solid, scanning his surroundings. He thought, the shop's closed, what should I do today? In front of a movie theater, he stroked his chin in excitement. Let's watch a movie. He looked at the ticket in his hand. Grinning, lucky, it starts in 10 minutes. His attention was drawn to a noisy commotion nearby. Curious, he turned to see what was going on. Across the street, a flea market was in full swing, with vendors loudly hawking their wares. Discounts here, get your bargains, trade your weapons here. Feeling intrigued, Yoo Seungwoo wandered toward the flea market. A flea market, huh? Suddenly, he spotted something surprising. Nabi, there was the cat. Sitting beside a little girl with green hair, he smiled. Already making friends, huh? Looks like a young girl. Glancing at his phone, he muttered. Oh no, it's time, I'll have to ask about it after the movie. Whistling cheerfully, he walked into the theater. Meanwhile, in the flea market, a cute little girl was happily wandering around. Her eyes sparkled as she looked around, captivated by the bustling stalls. Then, her gaze landed on something that made her eyes light up even more. Nabi, the cat, was staring curiously at a grilled meat stall. Meowing, what's this? Nabi wondered aloud. The green-haired girl exclaimed with delight, a chubby cat. She watched Nabi sitting there, utterly smitten. So cute, I really want to be friends with this kitty. Putting her hand to her head, she pondered deeply. What should I do? If it were Mom, she remembered her mother's advice. Unya, making friends isn't scary, just do something nice for them. And you'll be friends in no time. Her hair swayed as she perked up with determination. Exactly, excited, she skipped over to the grilled meat stall. Pointing to a skewer, she said, one chicken skewer, please. With the skewer in hand, she approached Nabi. Kitty, do you want to eat this? Nabi looked at her suspiciously. I don't take food from strangers. Unya gazed at the cat with childlike innocence. Then let's be friends, kitty, be friends? Nabi asked, tilting its head, don't you want to? She asked back. Nabi hopped up and down with joy. I have an earth friend now. Yay, meow. Unya smiled brightly, handing over the chicken skewer. Unya has a kitty friend. Unya is happy too. Taking the skewer, Nabi tasted it cautiously. The moment it bit into the chicken, it leapt into the air with excitement. So delicious, meow. Seeing Nabi's reaction, Unya giggled happily. Nabi's eyes sparkled as it examined the skewer. I wonder what kind of support effect this chicken skewer has. Support effect? Unya asked curiously. Nabi froze in shock. It doesn't have any effects? Unya scratched her cheek awkwardly. Does tasting delicious count as an effect? Nabi sighed in disappointment. How can this even be called cooking? If I eat this? It imagined itself turning into a plump, round cat. I'll become a fat cat. Unya tilted her head. But if you eat a little, you won't get fat, right? Pushing the skewer away dramatically, Nabi declared. No, I can't. Unya was surprised by the cat's strong reaction. All right, then, she gently shook Nabi. Mom always says that self-control and focus are the most important things. Nabi looked at her in confusion. Meow? Unya held Nabi's paw. If you eat too much of anything, it's bad for your body. But if you eat moderately, it's fine. Besides, people say experience is important. And you have to eat lots of delicious food to do well in school. The little girl spoke earnestly. You'll grow taller. And your physical abilities will improve too. Nabi listened seriously, startled. Delicious food can have such effects? Unya continued, swaying happily. Also, being a picky eater is really bad for you. Nabi was utterly shocked. Picky eater? The cat stared tensely at the skewer in its paw. Its body trembling slightly, then, resolving itself. It continued eating. It's so delicious. Unya cheerfully grabbed Nabi's paw. Kitty, let's go to the next food stall. Nabi smiled. Eyes narrowing with excitement. Let's go right now.